throughout the season. And whereas National Safe Boating Week is observed to bring attention to important life-saving tips for recreational boaters so they may have safer, more fun experiences on the water all year round, and whereas on average, more than 600 people die each year in boating-related accidents in the U.S., 75% of these fatalities caused by drowning, Michigan ranks 11th in the nation for boating accidents and fatalities. And whereas out of 88 boating accidents in Michigan, 17 deaths and 22 injuries were reported with nearly $900,000 in property damage. And whereas the vast majority of these accidents are caused by human error or poor judgment and not by the boat, equipment, or environmental factors. And whereas a significant number of boaters who lose their lives by drowning each year would be alive today if they had worn their life jackets. Therefore, I, Amy Shamrow, Mayor of the City of Traverse City, Michigan, do hereby support the goals of Safe Boating Campaign and the start of the year-round effort to promote safe boating and proclaim May 18 through 24 as National Safe Boating Week. And I am going to hand it over to these gentlemen. I don't know if you guys had.
I'd like to get a picture if we could.
Oh,
but
yeah, absolutely,
On
please.
behalf of the Coast Guard
Please,
Auxiliary,
for the mic so everyone can hear.
U.S. Coast Guard here in Traverse City, we really honor this proclamation. And we work hard to keep the boating public safe here in Traverse City.
And we're very grateful for you and our Coast Guard station here and our auxiliary members who help to keep us very safe.
And
So thank you for coming.
letting us be a Coast Guard city too.
Yes,
You know,
yes, well,
can
thank
we-
you. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Well, we gotta
Oh,
get.
Sarah,
we
can
gotta-
you help? We got a photographer on hand here. She's got all the experience.
Where are you going?
She knows the angles apparently.
Took your camera and ran.
It's my phone now.
All right, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you too.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I was having
very much.
technical.
Thank
Sorry, I
you so
couldn't come
much.
back before. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming. And now I will hand everything over to our organized and busy Colleen, who is doing our second annual City Academy graduate recognition today. I can't believe we're 2 in after
2 years,
this
yeah.
launched and is finally underway. So very excited to hear about this. We'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. I'm just gonna have this group. Are we gonna stand right here, or do you wanna? You guys, come on.
The camera can catch you back there.
Even if we have to, do you guys mind if their backs are to you? I apologize. Okay, while they roll in, good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to honor the 2024 City Academy graduates. My name is Colleen Pavelio, and I manage communications for the city, and I also serve as program director for City Academy. Tonight, we celebrate 12 remarkable individuals who have taken time out of their busy lives, some balancing full-time jobs, as well as children at home to engage deeply with the city. Doesn't really get much better than that. These graduates didn't just seek to learn about their community, they've become active participants. So I'd love to show our appreciation for their participation with a lovely round of applause. Hope you allow this applause, Mayor. Thank you. I also want to extend my deep gratitude to the city's dedicated staff. We had 8 sessions and a lot of staff participate who have gone above and beyond, once again, for City Academy, so thank you to all of them. I'm very fortunate to work with a fantastic team here at the city. Additionally, I want to give a special thank you to Katie Miller in the planning department, who's my right-hand gal and with me along the way to execute this program, so thank you, Katie. As a communicator, I understand the challenge of disseminating important news in a world saturated with information from all directions, often overwhelming and heavy. And this is why relationship building is so crucial. And it's really what has inspired the creation of City Academy with these 3 goals, which is knowledge. So having these individuals learn about the city, build relationships with these individuals, community relations, and then also involvement. So tonight's session, we really talked about boards, and we hope that these individuals will be interested in serving in boards and commissions in the future and be even more actively participating in city government. The class of 2024, you can see these little red dots, not to totally give away their homes, but they are, you know, spread out throughout the city with participation. So from Boom, Central, Kids Creek, Old Town, Slabtown. I did miss Traverse Heights in here, sorry, and that's my neighborhood. Novo, Sofo, and then also this little dot all the way to the east, which doesn't have a neighborhood. Maybe that'll change soon, but someone right on the edge. of the city. So we have 12 great participants and great representation from the entire city. This was a 5-week program, 8 sessions, so I won't go through everything that we talked about, but as you can see here, we had Government 101, we met with police, fire, talked about public engagement. We met at the garage. Everybody loves to see the big trucks. Who doesn't? I didn't know that we recycled asphalt. How great is that? We talked with Traverse City Light and Power and also had a great conversation about sustainability. Toured the water treatment plant. Always a just lovely experience touring the wastewater treatment plant. I think Richard said I'm geeking out about this stuff, and that was great. I geek out about it too, Richard. Session 5, we were at Hickory Hills. I love to have sessions at Hickory Hills. Who in this room has been to Hickory Hills? I mean audience as well. All right, you got to go out there. It's lovely. It's great, especially you kids. You can hike out there, ski, disc golf, and you can also rent the lodge as well. But we also planted 2 trees out there that we got to name to go in the interactive city tree map, so that was very exciting. Shaping our future, we were on a beta bus, thank you beta, and talked about engineering, planning, zoning, the DDA, also parking, it was a big one. And then a little public art tour walking throughout downtown. Show me the money, we talked about DDA funding, budgeting, revenues, expenditures, what you'll talk about tonight, and then we did a really fun budget exercise that I'm thinking about taking on the road. But it's a good exercise for this group, and it's a lot of great reflection. And then tonight, again, we talked about boards and commissions. So what I want to do is we have one speaker, Carrie, who wanted to just give a couple-minute overview of her experience, and then we will honor these individuals. So if you would mind just giving her a little bit of time to talk about her experience. Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate it.
Hopefully you can hear me. My name's Carrie Gray, and I have been a Traverse City resident for almost 30 years. And I'm a mom to 3 kids at Central Grade School. I've got parents aging in this community. And I really care about this community, which is what brought me to be part of this. I can say it has renewed my faith in democracy. There's a great group of people over here. So please continue to support City Academy, because I really think you're going to get your investment out of it. And then I also just wanted to say, give kudos to Colleen and Katie. I have a background in communications, and you guys have a 5-star staff there. So again, thank you for investing in this, and thank you for believing in us.
All right, so really quickly, we're going to honor each one of these individuals with a certificate of graduation. And then also, just to make things really full circle, they're going to get a locally grown and purchased from the farmer's market basil plant that has been potted in compost that was created at the Keystone facility by DPS. So this is like really full circle, this plant here, and hopefully it will be fruitful in your caprese salad this summer. All right, so okay, so first is Laura Dagwell. Laura, congratulations. We can clap, everyone. Thank you, Laura. Carrie Gray, thank you. All right, it says Helen, but goes by Lauren. Lauren Finch. And Cheryl Henner. Jeff Leonhardt. Before we mention this individual, this picture is of Angus McDonald, and he just became a U.S. citizen last week, and this is us celebrating the day after. So Angus McDonald, congratulations. Dan Noller. What's that? Oh, I don't know my alphabet. I apologize, but Scott Morey. Barbara Robbins. Richard Robbins. Yes, they're related. Bree Roberts. All right, and lastly, Paul Wilkins. Thank you. All right, thank you for giving us this time to honor these individuals and for supporting this program. We really appreciate it.
That's amazing. Let's have a round of applause for everybody who worked on this, too. Not often we get to step here and hear from a newly minted U.S. citizen and someone who tells us that we're making a program that's helping to save democracy. It's a great way to start off a meeting tonight. Really quick, do we have a hand raise of anybody here who was a 2023 graduate of the Academy? Are there any out here? I thought I saw somebody hanging around. Okay, well, we've seen them run for office, run and apply to boards and become very active, so I'm excited to see what will come from our 2024 informed citizens, and I'm very excited to continue on and maybe have you sit through some of these consent calendars and other items we're about to get to as well. So with that, I will hand this back over to Sarah to go through our consent calendar.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for individual consideration by the commission, and such requests will be automatically respected. If an item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted in parentheses on the agenda is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. 1, consideration of approving the minutes of the May 6, 2024 and May 13, 2024 meeting of the City Commission. 2, consideration of authorizing a blanket purchase order for the purchase of fuel for resale at the Duncan L. Clinch Marina. Approval recommended. 3, consideration of approving in concept the installation of 4 sculptures as part of the rotating arts exhibit, Art Along the Tart, at 10th Street, the expenditure of public art trust fund dollars and necessary documents as recommended by the Arts Commission. Approval recommended. 4, consideration of authorizing amendment to the agreement for the resource management services at the Brown Bridge Quiet Area to extend it for a period of 1 year. Approval recommended. Consideration of declaring 2 grasshopper mowers surplus and consideration of authorizing a purchase order for the purchase of 2 replacement mowers for use at Oakwood Cemetery, which is a planned purchase. Approval recommended. 6, consideration of declaring 5 Ford Interceptors surplus and consideration of authorizing a purchase order for the purchase of 6 Ford Hybrid Interceptors, which is a planned purchase for use by the police department. Approval recommended. 7, consideration of authorizing a purchase order for the replacement of 2 cone valve solenoids at the water plant. Approval recommended. 8, consideration of approving the budget for the City of Traverse City and Charter Township of Garfield Recreational Authority for fiscal year 2024-2025 as required by authority bylaws. Approval recommended.
Do we have any commissioners who'd like to pull an item from the consent calendar? Tim?
Item 6, please.
Item 6. Okay. And any public would like to pull an item from the consent calendar? Okay, seeing none. Commissioner Shaw, I know you had wanted to maybe make a comment but not pull an item.
I do. It's just about purchasing new lawn care equipment. And I really hope that Public Services will keep a close eye on the new technology that's coming out in all areas where they're currently using gas-powered equipment. In 2022, fossil fuel-powered lawn equipment emitted more than 30 million tons of carbon dioxide, which put it in the lead, as the lead driver of climate change. But I know you'll keep an eye on it. And we can always sell something a little bit early and get something new.
That's exactly right. And I thank Commissioner Shaw. She was in our agenda review, and as we pulled some other items, and we had a really robust conversation about that and the future possibilities of replacing things as technology gets better. So that's always a good point to remember in regard. So can I have a motion then for the amended consent calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended.
Thank you, Commissioner Stanley.
Support.
Thank you. Anderson, we'll do that. Okay, we got a motion from Commissioner Stanley, second by Commissioner Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we'll go to item number 6 then. Commissioner Warner, you had this item pulled for the hybrid interceptors for the police department.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm not outright opposed to this, but this request, taken in combination with budget items for the budget that we need to approve the first meeting in June, which also has the same vehicles in it, and part of the justification in the budget is that because we already have these hybrid Ford Interceptors, so we want to stick with them. So to me, here's our opportunity not to have so many of the Ford hybrid Interceptors and move toward fully electric vehicles. And so I had reached out to the city manager to ask about the decision process. And so there's been email response. There is information in the budget about why, because I had asked about that. There's information in the packet, so I can't disentangle which information was where in my head. But I know there's lots of information, and the words weren't scoring matrix, but essentially, like, it was shared that there are specific criteria to help them make the decision. And so I was hoping that we and the public could see some of that and how close the score was, so we as a body and as a community know how close are we to finally using electric vehicles. Because the more we purchase non-electric vehicles, the more we're committed for a longer period of time to those. So if there happens, and maybe it's too late for tonight to have anything like that as far as scoring, but I'm hesitant to approve this, knowing then that there's more in the budget for the same items, and it feels like we're going to get stuck on a path that we don't necessarily want to be on.
Mayor Shamro, so we do have Mr. Deturi here and our police chief. I don't know if there was a literal scoring matrix, but I do know that they weighed a number of important factors with law enforcement and in choosing this vehicle.
I'll target my response at the question about the more information. There is a report that's done by MSPS that studies some of these vehicles. That is something that can be provided. It's one of the pieces of the information that went into the decision-making process. There could be a pretty lengthy memo or report that dialogues or that follows the process that we go through for this purchase, which was extensive. Met with the city police chief and his staff, and Joel Tapio, our garage superintendent, did a great job looking into every angle that we could here. And to answer the question that was somewhat there was that when can we continually move forward? We have our eyes set on that, but with the conditions of the choices that we actually have and the way they work in operations, we're not quite at that point yet. We can talk a little bit about how that might be, but there's a lot of considerations, such as these vehicles, if they come home with an officer, how would they be charged? How do we get past the responsibility of all those pieces, which can be handled in agreements for sure. But really, one of the key factors we found was that the charging recommendations by the manufacturers don't allow us to move forward with electric vehicles without having essentially another 30% backup. The way that the charging works right now, they're looking at somewhere between 20 and 80% is what they recommend they should be charged for optimum life cycle of those vehicles. And what happens if a vehicle winds up home and is only charged for 2 hours, or is not fully charged, or has been running through a winter's day and is deleted from charge, and then is expected to be called back in an emergency situation. So that's what we're really looking at, is the safety factor balanced against the efficiency of the battery operation.
Thank you.
Have more questions, or?
No, I don't want to use, yes, I mean, I could ask questions, but it's not for tonight.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay,
At a later point, explore plug-in hybrids,
yeah.
probably the best option to alleviate what Mr. Deturi just laid out.
When in the agenda review, we were given a little bit more of the procedural reasoning by chief, or that was given by chief, of why these aren't quite where they need them to be. And I would again say, I think one of the conversations we can have going forward as a commission is, typically we've budgeted in the garage fund and said, okay, and then with the end of this life is about this many years, and we'll go out and get something to replace these very well-worn vehicles. And as we're talking about with like the mowers and other options, that's a policy that we could re-examine of how do we do this so that as technology updates in 3 years, do we have to wear it out for 10 years? We know the used car market and other things are very robust right now, that's something we could potentially be looking at so we're not losing money. Go ahead, Chief.
So there's a couple other factors, Banner Richmond, Chief of Police, that we considered with this. I mean, the EVs, along with the hybrids and several other vehicles that were tested, performed well in the testing. They all met some of their benchmarks. Obviously, if anyone's driven an EV, they're very quick, very fast. But there's some considerations. The Chevy Blazer that was tested and the Mach-E are considerably smaller in stature. So the Ford hybrid almost doubles in cubic foot in the rear seat and trunk. A lot of our officers and specialties have a lot of equipment that they need to put in their vehicles, which is can be very time consuming, taken in and out. We have a lot of vehicles that are taken home. There's some operational issues. ERT, our SWAT members, may have to drive to the other side of the state, up close to the bridge. We have prisoner transports. We've been to Detroit, Grand Rapids, Chicago, talking to a fleet manager out of Ann Arbor who had a lot of questions. We wouldn't be able to do that without charging, and that's an issue if we have a prisoner in there. That's an issue if we're responding to an emergency call on the other side of the state, and our vehicle doesn't have that. I'm not saying it won't get there at some point, but those are some operational issues that we have right now. As of right now, talking to the training lieutenant at Michigan State Police and with the Ann Arbor fleet manager, I don't know that there's any other department in Michigan that has EVs in their patrol fleet. They may have some in their admin or their civilian. There's some that have parking under their police department or their detective bureau, but none in their patrol vehicles. Either you have a take-home vehicle program or you're running cars 24 hours a day. They run for 12 hours, the next shift comes, they're on for another 12 hours. You'd have to have, rotating vehicles in and out to make sure that they're charged. So those are some of the things that we've run across right now that I have some questions about. That's kind of why we went to the hybrids. We are doing what we can to reduce the carbon footprint. In our budget, we have 2 EV motorcycles that we're going to test out. Again, there's some operational issues there. We do some benefit rides that come from a distance. Can we do those? Is it something we're going to have to change in the future? The officers really liked them, and that could be somewhere we head and kind of convert to an all EV motorcycle. But that's going to come after this year when we test 2 of them for a full year. We're also reestablishing the bike program, so it's going to get some officers out of cars. We're just a recipient of a fundraiser by the Elks Lodge here in Traverse City. So we're doing what we can right now. After these next 12 cars, we could be at 50% of our patrol fleet as a hybrid. That's a big step from all gas-powered cars. We have some detective cars that are probably going to be at this next go-around. 100% of our detective cars are going to be a hybrid. Admin, we're looking at that as well. So we're doing what we can. I think down the road we can look at this again. There's some, like Frank said, some issues about infrastructure and the cost of charging at home, at the station, those types of things.
Thank you. Do we have a motion on this?
I move that the city manager be authorized to issue a purchase order to Lunghammer Ford of Owasso, Michigan for 6 2025 Ford Hybrid Interceptors in the not-to-exceed amount of $453,522, with funds in garage funds 661000148,001, and to additionally declare garage Vehicle 004, 16, 007, 18, 021, 17, 029.17, I guess there was a point back here too, and 030.17 as surplus, so they may be sold at auction.
Support.
Thank you for that mouthful there, Commissioner Shaw, for making that motion, and the second from Mayor Pro Tem Wilson. Any further comment from the commission on this item? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Werner?
No.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Motion passes. And I know we have a lot of, really quick, I wanted to say, I know we have a lot of students in the crowd today, as it's getting to be that time of the year. So we are aware of your presence. We are going to go through the meeting. I hope our meeting is done before we'd hit a time limit for you guys, but if it does tend to run a little long, we will take a quick pause or direct you where you can get your signatures. But for now, hang in there and enjoy our budget discussion. So with that, I'm getting my stuff open, but I will hand it over to you, Liz, for our budget review.
Thank you very much. And some of the information in this budget review we went over last week, and some of it's new based on the feedback that we received, and we have updated it for you for this evening. So thank you very much. This is a budget review for our fiscal year 24-25. And again, we mentioned this in our presentation last week. There have been some new positions requested, and I am recommending that 2 new positions be budgeted in this budget, a new community police officer and a social worker coordinator. I would like to note that there is a grant, and I'm going to probably say the acronym wrong, but COSOP, I think that's correct, that does actually help to offset the costs of their current social worker and may actually continue with the second position. We just wouldn't know at this time how much of that grant funding is available, so we have budgeted as if we're paying for the full position. Other departments have asked for more staffing requests, and those requests are not a firm no. They are let's take a look at those requests through the lens of strategic planning, which we will be embarking on this hopefully August, September, and we will be doing an internal SWOT analysis of our operations. An update on the wages for 24-25. We had a number of union contracts that were ratified just a few weeks ago. GME, GMECT, Police Command, and Police Sergeant and Police Patrol unions who will all be receiving a 6% wage increase on July 1. The firefighters, we left this off the slide in your packet. I apologize, so this slide looks a tiny bit different. They are in the last year of their contract. They will be receiving a 3.5% wage increase on July 1. And the 3.5% wage increase was discussed at our last meeting for the ACT non-represented employees. In this budget, you will see a parking employee transition. The DDA parking employees are in the city budget. So those employees used to be city employees. I actually received this question from one of the commissioners. They used to be union city employees. When they were transferred out, they became DDA employees, and so they would come back and become union employees. Those classifications, where they come in the grade and their steps, will be determined with administration and human resources. We're projecting for 14 employees with wages and benefits. We're projecting that they will all accept family benefits, which are the most expensive. They may not, but we always want to be more conservative, especially when projecting fringes. And so overall, that may decrease if not all employees are using those benefits. We were asked about managing some transitions, and this is a really good question. So we currently have 17 individuals who've been hired since January of 2023 who are still actively employed with the City of Traverse City. We have 15 current vacant positions. There are 44 employees who will be eligible for retirement in the next 5 years. Eligible, that doesn't mean that they will necessarily, and right now we are aware of 2 of those eligible employees who have said, yes, I will be retiring on my eligibility date. So succession planning is something I talked about in my interview. It's something that we need to always be keeping aware of. And so The good news is where we are today versus, I think, where we were with staffing at this time last year. Your city manager position is filled. We have an interim assistant city manager, a new city engineer, new treasurer. And so with these upper management positions filled, I think we're in a really good position to start working on these succession planning efforts. So this slide will be followed up with some more specifics, but the general funds, as you can see, 60% of that allocation of general fund goes to personnel, which is why we really want to wait till we have some good projections before we start adding more positions. And right now, we are committing $250,000 annually to the MERS DP retirement, and that's going to help keep us from getting us at that low level where the state says we want you to be above a certain threshold. So we're making additional contributions to the retirement pension system. And if you see here the personnel breakdown, I'm not sure how closely you can read all those numbers, but if you look at the darker colors, police, fire, and parks and recreation are 50% of the personnel, and I think it speaks to the community values and what our community is looking for. And the other breakdowns include operating transfers, administration, just engineering and planning, and DPS. So just and local streets as well. There are other funding for the streets. That's just from the general fund. And then for this particular presentation, we were asked to look at the general operating fund balance project and additional analysis. And I'm not going to read everything right there in front of you, but right now we have a current unassigned fund balance as a percentage as 0.34%, which is a little higher from what the current policy is for the commission. The commission wants to keep it no higher than, I believe, 20%. I will be recommending an allocation from fund balance to balance this budget. We haven't landed on that final number yet, but it'll be around $1 million. So that would actually lower that 34% this fiscal year down to 23%, getting us much closer to that number. And again, an initial influx of fund balance to balance the budget doesn't mean we're going to use it all. And I believe there are some graphs that Mr. Posma put together showing that every year we budget for this, and this is how much we end up not using because we're just being conservative. So I wouldn't say at the end of the year we'll use that full $1 million, but right now that would be where we would need to land to have a balanced general fund budget. Capital improvement projects. The summary of projects, I'm not sure what pages 3 through 16 we're referencing there. I apologize. And I just want to say that just because they're out there and we've got a 6-year CIP doesn't mean they've been budgeted yet. But the funding sources are an important point of conversation. We have the Brown Bridge Trust Fund, the DDA and TIF contributions, the parking system revenue, the sewer and water fund, grants and private contributions, and general fund contributions. And those are all the funding sources that help us make those decisions with capital improvement projects. I know that there are 2 very lengthy memos in your packet today on water rates and sewer service charges, and I know there were some questions on that were given to me today. I would encourage each of the commissioners to go over those memos. It's an interesting and complicated process to come up with those different rates. So this is something that I will read. I normally don't like to read slides, but I just think it's important to read it into the record. So we have approximately 54 million planned capital projects in the next 5 years, and approximately 3.5% of the additional consumption portion of the rate. Rate for each additional 100 cubic feet to increase from $5.75 to $5.95. Base portion of the rate remains unchanged for the 24-25 fiscal year. And then the recommended rate increase, we do have approximately 30 million planned in capital projects over the next 5 years. Consumption portion of the rate is structured usage after the first 600 cubic feet. We're proposing increase of 3.5% from $2.10 per 100 cubic feet to $2.17 per 100 cubic feet starting in 2025. The base rate for the average household remains the same at $16 in 2025 and increases by 3.25% each year through 2029. And I do know that we have Mr. Krieger here who can answer more specific questions on these recommendations. The Brown Bridge Trust Fund, I just wanted to review these different ballot proposals. In November of 2023, the voters approved using principal from the $12 million to match a grant to purchase additional property adjacent to the current Brown Bridge property, not to exceed $746,245, and leaving a principal of $11,253,000 once the purchase was complete. And we will be utilizing a committee approach previously established during the last ballot proposal to identify potential projects and review ballot language. And I want to thank Commissioner Warner. I was not here when those committees were put together, and I only had part of the information, but I understand that last time it was a committee of 3 commissioners supported by staff. So we will let this commission decide. I think that it seemed like it worked out well that time as well. So that's certainly something we can continue for ballot language this time as well. The Brownbridge Trust Park Improvement Fund, park improvement examples over the years: Clancy Park Improvement, Hannah Park Improvements, Hickory Hills Improvements, Lay Park, Wags West Dog Park, park signs design, fabrication, and installation. So lots of really great projects that have happened over the years. Currently, we have $496,000 in a balance for future projects. There are 3 projects currently going that we estimate will use around $300,000 of that balance. The rest would carry forward. And the future projects are the Brownbridge Quiet Area, Highland Park, citywide park bathroom improvements. Did I skip one?
Okay, go ahead.
I skipped the 2019 proposal. I apologize. The 2019 ballot proposal allowing the city to use the principal over $12 million is set to expire on 10/24, and that's what I was referencing. So we will bring back a proposal to the committee to prepare to renew this proposal for another 5 years. Thank you, Mayor Shamro. At our last meeting, Commission wanted to have an update on where we stood on the ARPA funds. At the top, we have these are previously approved obligations from the ARPA funding, and I wanted to point out that the grant writer services for $75,000 has not yet been committed in a contract. We need to have these funds under contract by December 31st, 2024, and the same goes for the sanitary sewer inflow and infiltration implementation plan. So these are things that we need to get on the agenda in the next few months in order to commit those funds and be compliant. Remaining funds currently $340,489, and as our treasurer put in here, they must be obligated by December 31st, 2024. They must be spent by December 31st, 2026. We do have a tracking spreadsheet to monitor fund activity, and there is urgency in committing these funds to meet the state requirements. We did receive feedback from our commissioners last week that they wanted an update on the senior center, and I did put out via email a breakdown of where we stood. There is a funding gap currently. There was a question about the grant, and I don't know why we wrote no receipt of the expected million grant. We did not receive the grant, so we just were not approved for that grant. Resulted in a funding gap, and staff is recommending that all or some of the remaining ARPA funds be used towards this project and to support the funding gap because we already have contracts in place. It would be the most expeditious way to use those funds and be compliant. We are not proposing anything for it doesn't need to be approved soon, but it's just something that's been on our minds. So again, proposed solutions, allocation of obligated ARPA funds to the senior center to help bridge the funding gap, utilize existing contracts with the senior center to expedite the process, review furniture contracts to look for efficiencies, and seek additional funding sources. The cannabis excise tax and road millage, we've been referring it to, I think, marijuana tax, but we wanted to use the proper nomenclature. The cannabis excise tax or marijuana revenue, we received approximately $714,000 year to date. The majority of that came in through the recreational marijuana licenses. We were budgeting a little over $59,000 per license, and I believe at one time we had 16 active licenses. We currently have 12. So we only received that excise tax on the current licenses. So when we budget for future revenue, we're not budgeting on the 16, we're budgeting for the 12 that are currently active. And if that number were to ever change, we would track that, and then we would budget appropriately. And so there was another recommendation by commission to say, hey, how can we sort of track the dollars that we're receiving through the cannabis excise revenue, even though we're receiving it into the general revenue, and like we're using it like as an earmark for different things. So I just wanted to say that, you could say that the police officer wages and fringes would be offset by the excise tax, the ATS bed request for $100,000, and other new budget items deemed appropriate for funding. I just want to make sure that we can say that we want certain things offset by this revenue, but there are no strings attached to it. So that's just a choice that the commission can make to keep track of those dollars and how they're spent. The county road millage, we are discussing the renewal of the millage, and information on funded projects will be forthcoming. Oh, that's my last one? Oh, that was fast.
All right.
And I know a number of commissioners have a lot of questions, and we have staff here to answer those questions as well.
And actually, what I think I'm going to do, unless there's an objection from the commission, is I'd like to open up the public hearing now so we can get public comment and any potential questions. So those questions can be included in our discussion if we do have any. Since for the public to know, I will open a public hearing about the budget. It's your chance if you have any comments you want to make about the budget. If you have any questions, it is just a public comment portion, so it is not a dialogue. But there again, if anybody has questions they'd like us to maybe include as we're having our bigger discussion, we can make note of those questions and try to answer them the best we can if we need to. So I'm going to do it that way just so we can have a more robust discussion. So with that, I will, as I had Mr. Schneider do at our DDA meeting on Friday, I will open the public hearing on the 2024-25 budget. If anybody would like to make comment, please come up. Oh, see somebody standing up, please feel free. I know it's kind of a packed house today.
I'm just going to quickly read public comment rules.
Yes.
We ask that you state your name and address, indicate if you're a city resident, non-city resident, and/or city business owner. We have a 3-minute time allotment per speaker. When your time is elapsed, the timer will beep. And finally, we request that all language be respectful to all parties.
And I think Ms. Lutz can take that and pass it down. It looks like there's a handout. And please, whenever you're ready.
Hi, my name is Deborah Greats, and my business is at 645 East 8th Street, Traverse City, Michigan. I did do some reading on the budget, and I'm not sure if this is my right public comment time or if it should have been at the end, but I'm here to represent the North Boardman Lake Business District, and we noticed that something that was previously a priority to the Planning Commission, which was the promenade at Franklin Street, came off the capital improvement plan. And as a robust business organization, we're proud of the fact that we actually have a high engagement in our community for our monthly meetings, and that we've worked on a lot of projects with the city. We were disappointed to see that one came off and are making a literal attempt to draw the focus back to that opportunity. This comes out of the 8th Street charrette that was done, and when we had that, what I considered an amazing planner in town, and he walked around, he goes, your city has this jewel of the Boardman Lake sitting here, and it's not being really utilized in some of the ways it could be. And he recognized that Franklin Street from 8th Street, you could literally just look at the lake and see that it's in the center of our downtown for so many of us and so many of our visitors. Amazing work was already done making 8th Street something where you can walk across it now. We've got the 5-mile loop around the lake. We're looking for asphalt for people to park on, and they're welcome to park at our North Boardman Business District and use the 5-mile around the lake. So if we were looking at a promenade there down Franklin Street to the lake, it would highlight the other things like the Traverse Area Community Sailing. Their building does not block the view. They would be directly to the left. They provide bathrooms. We've got Hall Park there, which is used, but I think we would all like to see even greater use of it. So my attempt is to just, as we think about future planning, budgeting, and what our city might accomplish, to bring back some attention to that. Thank you.
Dr. Graves.
Thanks.
Any other comments or, go ahead.
Hi, Dan Worth, resident of Cedar, Michigan, but big fan of Traverse City. And I'm just wanting to mention briefly that when I look through the budget and I see the climate commitments the city has made in the past, it doesn't seem to gel. I know there were a few items that were pulled out. The electric mowers were one, the electric vehicles were another, and I understand the concerns with those. But those are just a couple little examples, and I think when we're looking at a budget and something as large as climate and something that's receiving as much federal and state funding as clean energy and energy efficiency work right now, everything has to be viewed through that lens. And so it's a little frustrating to look through a budget and not see, say, a full-time staff position focusing on addressing climate change and bringing clean energy dollars in. Ann Arbor is a wonderful example. There's a wonderful woman named Missy Stultz who's running a great program down there. I left you guys a handout when I first walked in. There's sort of a 4-issue front page, but then the second page is a list of what Ann Arbor did. They broke it down by sector and by project and showed what money needed to be invested, what the return was on that investment, how much GHG was reduced per dollar spent, and they've really taken it on to lean in and try to do an overview of how all of these issues can tie together. And so I'd love to see a full-time staff position to push that work forward. I'd love to see the city host some sort of major event that would bring vendors and experts up so that we could talk to them, and that businesses and others in the city who wanted to explore things could. And then I'd love to see something like the Brown Bridge Trust Fund at least considered for a large renewable purchase. There's a lot of really good deals these days. There are partnerships you can do with companies that are developers, where they take the REAP grants and find them, they take the tax breaks and find them. There are a lot of great companies around, including Keene. 5 Lakes has come up and advised. They're advising TCLP, doing a wonderful job on that. But I'd just love to see, and one of the things I loved about Ann Arbor was it brought everyone together. It was sort of the DDA there, the city, local utility, and it's now not a staff, but it's a group of about 40 people, sort of similar to the Green Team, but on steroids, really pushing this forward. And so I'd love to see more of that up here. I'm frustrated not to see it in the budget. I appreciate all the competing interests you guys have. But I'd just love for you to take a look through that sheet. Please follow up with me for a coffee or a beer or something, just to talk a little more specifically. Feels weird to come up here and talk at all of you at once. But I've been doing this for a while. There's amazing opportunities. There's tons of funding. Our region needs this. So please lean in and keep this in the back of your mind and take a look at that plan. And we can bring Missy up to help us walk through. She's done a fantastic job, as have some here. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dan. Any other comment? Going once? Okay, with that then, I will close the public hearing and bring it back, I don't have my gavel, and bring it back to the commission for our discussion now. So anything in the budget that you had questions about or any comments? The only thing I would say really quickly, by the way, to the public comment is I know the Brown Bridge Trust Fund money has been voted, for now at least, to be allocated to just parks, and the last one specified the parks, so that is where it's at now. Future ballot measures as that money comes through can be discussed by probably future commissions. I think it's 5 years by the last vote. Do you remember?
It is, but it's up this.
Oh, it is up there, sorry.
So-
I just totally blanked on what we just talked about
Yeah.
because I was thinking about the
No,
vote
it's
we just
okay.
had, so thank you for that,
We still got it
Commissioner
along.
Warner. So we can have that discussion, thank you. So I'll open it now to the fellow commissioners, yes.
Yeah, start with some easy questions. The CIP link wasn't working. I didn't try it today because I was reading other stuff. Is it working now?
Did the link work that I sent to you in the, okay, well, we will fix the glitch.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have another question. The 17 people who were hired this year don't include the 14 coming from the DDA parking, do they?
No.
And then the senior center. So is the funding gap a full $1.5 million? Are
No.
we missing $1.5 million?
I think we're down around $1 million in the funding gap. I have to sit down with Heidi and Brian, but I think it's down to around $1 million.
Okay, and
Can
so
I-
we've allocated out of the general fund 500,000.
Correct.
And then there's another 340 available from ARPA.
That's unallocated, correct, yeah.
And there's also potential for our general fund balance, the 3 million that's in there. So we can cover this.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question to yours, Commissioner Shaw, and then I'll hand back? Is this we're $1 million short of like the absolute dream wish list, or we're $1 million short of getting it to the best functioning point that we can?
That's a good question that I can ask Michelle Hunt. I know that she is going through with a fine-tooth comb to see where she can make some responsible cuts to get us down to getting the project to fully completion. So I know that that's an ongoing conversation right now.
And to clarify, I don't mean that as not being electrified. I mean it as, we're not going to get the high range that they wanted and maybe something mid, or not do a complete commercial kitchen at this time, but have some facilities. So continue, Commissioner Shaw, I just wanted to clarify
Well,
that.
there are funds, there's also cannabis excise tax funds that could be used with fanfare
Yeah. And we can actually take a loan from some of our other funds. I think we can take a loan from Fund 565, the Economic Development Fund. In fact, that fund is often used in recent memory in the last few years as loans. So we have a few options. Once we get through the budget, I'd like to look at all the different funds, sit down with the staff, and come up with a final, this is the gap, and these are the potential funding measures, and this is what we recommend, but here's the options for the city commission to consider.
And you did already say, though, that this shortfall is, like, we're obligated. We already have contracts, so.
Correct.
But that gets into, is it a shortfall of 500,000 when we strip it back a little, or is it a which we have, or is it a
Well, can
shortfall of $1 million full?
Can we strip it back if we've already agreed to pay
Some,
for
yeah.
certain things?
Some things we can, and I know that the staff are looking at the things that they can. And here's Heidi.
Yes.
So, yeah, we actually met with Michelle earlier in the week, and she's looking, the furnishing bid is $305,000, and she's thinking she can get that pared down significantly, hopefully. I think the picnic tables were state-of-the-art and a lot more, so she's kind of thinking if she can scale that
Facebook
back.
Marketplace.
And then- And then Evie, I think she's got another electronic video she's looking. So there are contracts outside of construction. Construction, those are the ones that were kind of locked into the contracts. It's just the accessories and what's going inside the building that she's working on.
Thank you for those details, that helps. Go ahead,
Can I
Tim.
ask a follow-up question to that? Maybe it's not a question, it's just my recollection is in support of what I think I hear the mayor saying from roughly a year ago or thereabouts, that the discussion was, like, here's the total dollar amount, but if we don't have the funds, it wasn't necessarily to downgrade any furniture or equipment, but certain items we could wait as a community. Not that we want to wait, but are there some items that, okay, maybe it takes 9 more months or 12 more months before the funds are available to include those at the senior center? But I don't pretend to know what exactly that was or when, and maybe that's only a very small amount, so it doesn't really matter compared to everything else. But it would be interesting to see the whole
But that could be
breakdown, like what's already obligated.
Right, like the picnic
to
tables or
construct-
something.
Yeah, contractors, et cetera.
And I think that comes down to the discussion of a short-term loan from the Economic Development Fund. So the building can be furnished, but it's not going to come from the general fund. And that was another thing when we discussed the ARPA, potentially using those contract funds. If we're going to do a general fund contribution, if we can utilize ARPA funds for the senior center, then we get rid of all of the ties and the requirements that come with it. So instead of doing a general fund to the senior center, we utilize those ARPA funds and then use the general fund to replace the grant writing or whatever. I think that is just better
Yeah,
planning.
thank you.
Yeah.
I guess the other part that is a question for the future meeting where we're discussing this in more detail is where the private fundraising currently is. Like, how can we, not to hold them hostage in any way, but how can we leverage that or encourage it? Because I don't recall hearing an update for quite some time on that private
I believe
fundraising.
at our meeting earlier, Michelle had a potential, and don't quote me on this, but I believe it was $150,000 that she had newly committed.
Oh, great.
Yeah, Michelle's working really hard on
Just that's all
sponsorships. Yeah.
The puzzle pieces. So
Yep.
thank you.
Go ahead,
And just to
Heather.
clarify, cutting back on things like replacing state-of-the-art picnic tables is fine, or dishware, but you're not going to change like the flooring, locks, doors, windows, all those things are going to stay, because those are really important, and it contributes to the life of the building and the health of the building and the health of people in the building. Those things are part of the contracts that have already been signed, right?
I believe so. Michelle would be the expert on that, but when the examples was the picnic tables, which she was looking to renegotiate.
Commissioner Shaw, did you have other questions? You had been recognized. Okay, anyone else? Go ahead, Commissioner Anderson.
I would be requesting some additional follow-up. One of the questions that I raised earlier was regarding the water and sewer rate increases, and some of the projections, the assumptions upon which the rates are predicated. I'd like to understand more about them. As an example, there's a 4% annual inflation rate baked into these assumptions for the next 25 years. And I'd kind of like to understand,
So,
where did that number come from?
I can speak
I'm
to it,
also-
and Art can correct me if I'm wrong. Brian is the expert. But we actually have a program called Waterworth that we utilize, and there's a lot of moving parts. The 4% most, with the amount of capital improvements that we're going to put in, we are considering doing a bond, whether that's out at the market or a state bond. Those bonds are going to have interest that we're going to have to pay, so that inflation rate considers that additional amount that we're going to have to pay
So you're not
for the
referring
funding.
to general conditions within the economy
Well,
and anticipating?
It's literally a lot of data that goes in with a lot of different moving parts. That is considered, but I believe the 4% is the projection of the interest of the funding.
Okay, great. I was pleased to see that we're making pretty conservative estimates in the growth in our customer base, but I wondered about the rationale for why do we expect usage per customer to increase also?
I would say most likely it would be.
It's in the software?
And, obviously, customers, as ADUs are built, there's going to be more service to homes.
So this
and
is related perhaps to zoning density?
Like I said, there's a lot of data entry points, but that could have something to do with that component. Brian is the expert, and
Can I ask a quick follow-up to
EVs?
that?
Yeah.
Because I know that there are EVs and questions like that too, but I also know that for years now, our population has a lot of single or like two households, and as people are aging out of individual homes, they're being replaced by families or multiples. I know that was a number we looked at before. Are they looking at population and age forecasting as part of those numbers that go into the big machine, or is that part of it as well?
From what I've seen, I didn't see those as part of the.
Would it be helpful for June
schematic.
3rd if I had Mr. Krieger present just a breakdown of how we come up with these projections?
Yeah. Sometime in the next week would be
You could
lovely.
even email it, yeah.
I would,
Yeah, or
I
you
would
could
just
email
like
it.
to
Okay.
Let us sit with it a little.
be sure that we are, I've seen some future forecasts that sometimes.
So just for clarification, kind of the data that we're putting into Waterworth, what are we putting in to determine what
How
we're
we're
getting?
getting
back?
to that,
And which ones do we have control over? But to help me understand the baseline assumptions that you're using as rationale for the rate increases.
Sure, we can provide that.
That's my interest. Thank you.
Did you have another question, Commissioner Anderson?
Not on the city budget. We're going to treat the DDA budget separately, yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Tim.
Questions about more comments, but first, I'll start with a question, sorry. On the ARPA funds, so to that slide, to the points being raised about having dollar amounts obligated, the $200,000 for city tree planting, there was strong support for that a year ago or a year and a half or almost whenever it was that this got approval. But will those dollars be obligated by the end of this calendar year? To me, that high dollar amount would require quite a plan, and I don't recall hearing anything about putting together a plan.
That was the original amount that was allocated.
So it's already been allocated.
We did have discussion with Michelle, and I don't know if we have finalized bringing it back to the board, but there was discussion of utilizing what she could not use and have committed by the end of the year for the trees at the senior center and for the landscaping component at the senior center. And that's not a final, and that was just part of the discussion because most likely she will not be able to utilize all of the funds by the obligation time for those trees. So we did have that conversation. but we have not finalized what direction we're going with that yet.
Okay, so if we, at some point, could see a breakdown of that, maybe it's been buried in here, I just didn't catch it, as far as the 200,000 we'll be able to spend or obligated, I'll make it up, 120,000 by the end of the year, so there's 80,000 outstanding, so that we can, at some point, have the discussion of what to do with that money, either obligated for trees or decide how to spend it elsewhere.
If
Just to have
you
that
did get the
discussion.
spreadsheet, so there's ARPA for landscaping. There is, she's estimating 73,800 of that.
But then this body, in my opinion, would have to have the discussion, do we want the money going for landscaping? Because we were very clear this
Correct.
was trees, and we were very clear this is trees in the city limits. Because in past years, we as a city, and rightly so, have planted trees at Hickory, we planted trees at Brown Bridge, but the past commission that approved this was very clear they wanted it in our tiny city footprint. Like, let's make sure we plant lots of trees in our tiny footprint. And so, again, we can certainly make changes to that and say, well, general landscaping and senior center needs a cash infusion anyhow, so it makes sense. But to make sure that we're doing it with our eyes wide open.
Yeah, and I think the
commitment can be up
conversation
down the line.
Was when you were asking why weren't we using the tree fund dollars, is because we're trying to utilize as much ARPA fund money as we can up front, and then that way we'll have the tree fund money for next budget cycle.
Okay.
Was kind of where
Thank you.
we're at with it.
I appreciate the explanations. And then on the same page, and this is more just comment, from when these allocations were approved, back a year and a half ago or so, the grant writer services, that is how it was approved, but the study sessions prior to that and the discussions were largely around how to use the ARPA money to leverage Inflation Reduction Act, IRA money from the federal government coming through Lansing. And so that was the interest of the past city commission, was how can we as a city engage a grant writer to help us access those dollars coming from the federal government, because we do have we just don't have a person on our staff that targets that, and there are folks out there. So that was it. And again, this body, we can shift it, change our minds, but to make sure we have our eyes wide open. And then final comment, kind of along the same lines with the sanitary sewer, I&I, and flow and infiltration. Again, previous discussions and even a budget amendment several years ago were specific to an I&I strategy, because I&I is something, sorry, and for the kids out there that are still awake, the inflow and infiltration is sanitary sewer, so all the water that goes to the wastewater treatment plant, but we have water that goes there that we don't have to treat, so stormwater that makes its way into that, illegal connections, or sometimes we call it illicit, so it doesn't sound so bad, but connections, so the water goes there. So we treat more water than we need to, and that costs money. But a strategy might take 10 years to implement. And so but that's why previous commission had a discussion about a strategy. The investments we've made are fantastic, and the investments we continue to make, and there's monies in the upcoming budget to address I&I, but at some point it makes sense to have a strategy, because it's such a big project and likely would take a decade to try to implement. And so again, we can change our minds and say, no, let's just spend it here and there, but the idea was a strategy would be a more purposeful approach to get the best results for our community as the money is invested to make the fixes needed. So I'll stop there. Sorry for the
One thing
ramble.
I will say about that is I believe we are planning on potentially the I&I plan, the 250, potentially that being able to be utilized by ARPA. It's the gender-neutral restrooms and sleeping quarters that we would need the contract by, that we're questioning whether we'll be able to get that. So, but I believe, based on the data that we have, we potentially will be able to utilize the sanitary sewer inflow, I&I, with ARPA funds, based on what we have in the plans.
I recall that as well, from wanting like a bigger picture. We've been feeling like we've been taking swats at things left and right. But that was 2 years ago, so it looks like Art's ready to come up with some more info.
I can add a little bit about the I&I study. So recently we went out to an with an RFP to professional firms, which hasn't been awarded yet, but I do have 3 responses from that, and they're all very good, and I'm still reviewing them, but I plan to bring it forward in June for award, and it's for a sanitary sewer evaluation study. So it is a plan to take data that we have about rainfall events and how much inflow is coming into the sewers, because we've been measuring flows since 2021. The city commission at that time allowed us to buy sewer meters, so we have like different locations, and we have a rainfall, a rain gauge that's collecting data, and you can correlate that. And it takes some modeling, and it takes a strategy to build where we're going to find upstream from where these meters are reading high. Some tend to be flashy, so if you get a big rainstorm, the flow in the pipe is coming up quickly. So we know we've got situations along that trunk line. So it is built into that sanitary sewer evaluation study. I'd be glad to share the RFP with you. It's probably on the city website. The advertisement was. So, you know, and we can build off that in the future. If it doesn't quite meet what you're thinking as a commission, you know, we could work with a consultant to add some things if we wanted to. The 3 that I have are close to the budget, a couple under, 1 over. So going through that, I just wanted to give you that update.
Thank you.
Along the
That's
lines
great.
you're looking for?
We ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. Other questions on the budget? I'm going to pop in with one here. The county road or millage, we kind of talked about this last time. If the county decides not to go forward with putting one on the ballot, and I think we've discussed this in the past, but I think it's always important to bring it up and have us talk about it. So this might be a question for Warren. And we decide that is funding that we want and need from our portion. Is that something we can put forward ourselves, or does a road millage for us is it dependent on the county putting it forward, or can we put our own road millage forward if we had to?
I'll have to double check this, but I'm relatively certain that it's dependent on the county.
Okay.
And it would have to be a separate millage increase. I mean, you could do a millage increase and use it for that.
Well, that's what I'm
as the
saying, like
city,
if-
but it wouldn't be a road millage. per
Oh, we
se.
couldn't itemize it as a road.
See what I'm
economic-
saying?
Yes, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. That helps as we move forward. And so I put that to everybody in the public too, as you hear the county discussing road millages. If you want us to continue to be able to levy a millage for our roads, that's not in our hands, potentially, it likely is not in our hands. So we need our county friends to make sure that money continues flowing if we need it. Go ahead, Tim.
When does the county road millage expire?
That's great, isn't it 2 years? It's relatively soon. I think,
I
great
really
question,
don't
that's a
know.
good one to follow
I'll
up
look
on.
for it, yeah.
But I think
So
it's
like a
relatively
year
soon.
from this November, year and a half?
Yeah, they're usually even years, so it might be 26, right? Or is it a little further out? I'll check, thank you for, somebody just mentioned it was coming soon, but now I can't remember when they said it was, so. I will check on that too, so thank you, good question. Any other, and to the point about the promenade that was made during public comment, I don't want to ignore it. We don't have a lot of answers right now. I know large projects like that often require a lot of, us getting a lot of outside funding, just because it's not a large project as far as the mileage, but that would be digging up that area, replanning, and that's a lot that goes into it. So as we're moving into the new CIP planning in the future and other items that might be something that we revisit or at least have better answers to, we're kind of in a transition period right now, as was discussed, of what that process is going to look like. So unfortunately, we don't have an answer for you right now, but there'll be continued conversations that we hope we can continue to be engaged with and be able to find more answers. So anything else on the city budget at this moment from anybody? All right, to keep it organized, I'll move on to item 2, which is the budget for Traverse City Light and Power for the fiscal year. Did anybody have any further questions about that? I think we had a pretty robust conversation, but I just want to make sure. Okay, and seeing none, I will move on to the DDA budget. And I know, Commissioner Anderson, you had some questions about that?
I do have a couple of questions. I want to thank the city staff for helping to provide a version of the prior budgets that included projections for the remainder of this fiscal year. That was very helpful in terms of understanding where we stand right now versus budget. And however, I still feel that it lacks the level of detail that has been provided in the other budgets that we've reviewed, and I'm anxious that that level of detail be available for the public and for them to see also. So while I appreciate, I understand that Mr. Burkholder has invited commissioners to reach out and meet with him individually to answer specific questions. I would urge us to have that process be public if possible. And if that means that we have another study session a week from tonight, I would certainly support that. My other question has to do with an item that I believe from Friday's DDA meeting is going to be included as a line item in the DDA budget, and that is an economic development contract with Traverse Connect. And I would like to see that brought before the commission as a separate item of new business. I think it's important enough for us to review that. Because it's not a standalone proposal, I understand there is also one on our tonight's agenda. And so I feel that should receive the same level of conversation and review as the one that has been proposed for the city.
That is the DDA's budget for their own services. We could ask the contract be shared with us if we wanted to look at it. That is public. We don't have we could deny the entire budget based on that if we wanted to, but we don't have final contract say over a contract between, unless I'm wrong, the DDA directly and a service. We have final say over ours. That'll be that, like the one tonight, that is our engagement. That is one of those things, just like TCLP in their budget has this allocated as well. A Traverse Connect contract, I believe. Did that go through again this year in the budget, Tim? It has for the last few years for economic development.
I don't remember seeing it in there.
It has been for several years. And so those are one of those individual things where that's under each budget. And because I know, for example, what Traverse Connect presented was aid and things like digitizing the downtown discount and the gift certificates. That is something that they will be helping the DDA specifically with. That is not something that we'll be helping the city with, because that would not be in a contract with us. But again, we can ask that contract be emailed out to commissioners, but we don't have final say over it other than the budget. So if we wanted to say that the budget rides on that, then that could be a commissioner's comments to this discussion, but that's...
I'm willing to make that comment. I believe if you look at it in terms of professional services being provided for various reasons across our city spending, it adds up fast. And I think that I would be willing to vote against the entire budget if I find that is still part of the DDA's
Would you like that
intended
as part of the
spending.
TCLP one with the same condition?
If it's in there, which I didn't see it in there, but
Okay,
yes.
I'll check and see if it
thank
is,
you.
yep. And I know Mr. Call is here for later discussion, so I'm sure he'd be willing to answer some questions about that as well. And then, I don't know, Harry, did you want to, is Harry out there? Yeah, we can, if you want to come up, we can field some of this. Oops, sorry, I was trying to get my screen back up before it made some noise from my glucose monitor. I apologize. So Harry, thank you for joining us up here. Did you want to address that in any way about the contract? I know how that factors into our budget. We had a robust discussion. I was part of it, but you are at the time. I would also remind everyone that much like we went through last year with our budgeting, we have an interim DDA executive director right now that took over just as budgets were being calculated. So I don't think we should assume that this is the level of everything for here on out, as opposed to what happened previously. but continue, Harry.
I'll just speak to the Traverse Connect discussion that the DDA board had. I mean, it's similar to the request that you received from Traverse Connect, a different dollar amount, but it's for many of the similar services, with also some more focused ideas about how that organization could help the DDA and all the merchants in downtown, focusing on some e-commerce items. I'm happy to share that letter with everyone.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Did we have, while we've got you up there, Harry, does anybody else have any questions about the DDA budget for Harry at this time? Or in general, but he's here to answer.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of questions, but I was asked to have that conversation privately.
You can ask questions here if you'd like.
At Friday's meeting, you said that the $100,000 for public infrastructure at the Rotary Square was for physical infrastructure under the Rotary grant. Although in the budget document, it says that this item includes costs for visioning and possible costs outside the Rotary grant.
So the Rotary grant that we receive is for conceptual design and visioning for Rotary Square.
Which is $450,000.
That's the amount that we have available to spend on that. Doesn't mean we're going to spend $450,000 on the conceptual design. That's the grant we received. The $100,000 that you're referring to out of TIF 97 is for any other physical improvements that we might do at the site this year, given the amount of use that we have and given that the farmers market is scheduled to move to that site after the 4th of July. So there's two different pots of money from what those two different taxes are coming from.
Okay, it was a little, the summary was not explicit. It was confusing. I do have something to say. I don't see any plan for a bathroom at Rotary Square. Maybe that's in the future and part of the concept, but I'm really concerned about the availability of downtown bathrooms. The one at Park Street, I believe, is still closed. A bathroom at Rotary Square, would that be managed by the city? Because as parking moves from the DDA to the city, I understand that the bathroom is also moving.
The Park Street one would, right, because that's part of the
Would move to the city. Would the Rotary Square, if there is a bathroom there, would that be the city as well?
Whatever is built at Rotary Square at that time, it would be under the purview of the DDA unless there was an interlocal agreement or a service agreement with the city to provide for some services related to those restrooms.
Okay.
But the restrooms and anything, a major significant build on that site are years away.
All right. Well, I think if we can provide bathrooms at the Pines, which, thank you very much, Chief Richmond, we can provide a bathroom downtown. What's going on? We need bathrooms.
Just to highlight one quick thing, we do have a program that we partner with 4 or 5 local businesses, and we give them a stipend, so they use those bathrooms as public restrooms, and those are all identified on wayfinding maps and on our website.
And part of the discussion on Friday was
I heard that, but
opening
I
it up
don't
and
think there's a
expanding
lot
it.
of room for growth there. Most of the bathrooms are in the basements. They're not ADA accessible.
They're
What you
required
got
to be
is what you got.
required to be ADA accessible to have been in our program.
Okay, snow melt. It's my understanding that Radio 1 turned off their heated sidewalk because it was too expensive to maintain. I've also heard that the snow melt system between Modes and Max's was damaged during a parking lot repair and hasn't been fixed. I also heard that the boiler that ran that system got old and was removed. Something else
Well, do you wanna- yeah, can we address the heating systems? We did talk about the damaged one by Modes. I'm not sure about the radio one.
I can't speak to the radio center one. I'd have to find out about that one. I can't speak to that. I know there was damage at the one that you're referring to in their Modes that would require some substantial repairs in a larger sense for that entire block. In terms of the boilers are actually housed in those private businesses, and so that's essentially an agreement that we have with those to run those boilers. So I can get you more details on the extent of that damage. I just don't have that in front of me.
Yeah, and I heard they took the boiler out. Now, it's hearsay, so I don't know if it's true or not, but they haven't been running it.
Yeah, that's the damage one you're asking
I'm
about.
not convinced that snow melt is a super great project. It degrades concrete sidewalks. When the snow and the ice melts, the water's absorbed into the concrete, and then when the air temperature goes below freezing, it turns into ice inside the concrete, starts flaking out, and pulls the concrete apart. you know, we're not getting as much snow up here anymore. Vale doesn't have a snow melt system. You know, do we really need, is this a worthwhile project?
I see Nicole Van Ness up here to discuss, I think, the questions you had about the damages.
Yes.
And rumors.
Nicole Vaness, Transportation Mobility Director. I just wanted to quickly address the comments regarding the snow melt between Lot O, which is the corner of Cass and State Street, and Modes, which is Lot G, city-owned property. So that snow melt sidewalk project was back from the late 90s, early 2000s, and it was agreement with the property owners to purchase and do like a special improvement cost share with the boiler being housed on the Lot O property, on the city's property, and then the city would maintain it. And so it was maintained for many years. They redid work in Lot G. They nicked the line. The line was not able to be found when concrete was encasing it. And so versus continuing to pour glycol, you know, a contaminant, and we shut off the system. At that point, too, the boiler was at least 18 years old, well past its useful life. And so at that point, there was no plan to replace it, because it was not intended to be something that was carried on in the parking fund. It was meant to be a program that was a pilot that then would start a share with other businesses, and given that there was no way to replace it, we just closed off the line. The boiler was removed from Lot O. That property was sold as part of the homestretch property, and so the boiler is no longer on that property, and the gas line has been capped.
Thank you.
Well, again, I'm not sure that this is, I'm not very enthusiastic about the snow melt project. Let's see. I was really happy to hear at Friday's meeting that there was some discussion about Rotary Park and the Lower Boardman Ottaway River being at the top of the list of the priorities over the next 2 years. Scott Hardy later on brought up an important point, saying that a number of years ago, the city had a report saying that we needed to be investing at least $1 million every single year in stormwater. And he asked, how do we start allocating this funds? And you responded that we needed to bake that into our larger capital projects. And that the proposed hire of a DDA engineer could begin to address low-hanging fruit. That wasn't included in your summary either. I think that you've got $1 million next year budgeted for the Riverwalk project in creating engineering plans. And I think that river restoration includes explicitly and essentially stormwater management. And the DDA can contribute by baking stormwater management into the Riverwalk plans. That $1 million allocation should be able to prioritize stormwater management, which should also be a priority for your requested engineer. Thoughts?
I agree.
I think
I know, Mayor Shamro, you said, you know, that stormwater was really too big of a project for the DDA, and
I've said the DDA alone, that we have to do it with the city to make when we hire the engineers, et cetera, to be impactful. I don't think that the DDA can't contribute, and I don't think that the DDA can't be a part of that or have their own projects as well, but the massive work we need to do is also going to take all of us together.
And the Riverwalk is a big project.
Absolutely.
And it absolutely should include, as a priority at the top, is how to manage stormwater. And if you know, you've got funds for at least the next couple of years, and I think that that's a worthwhile project. The incubators, my last comment, at the DDA Finance Committee meeting a few weeks ago, wasn't the majority decision to shut down the incubator, and weren't board members approaching the landlord to see if they could get out of the lease?
That was certainly discussed at the Finance Committee, but no decision is made by the DDA board. We do have a lease with our current, with the current building owner that we're still discussing, but no decision has been made by the DDA board at this time.
Well, it's another one. It's another one of your projects I'm conflicted about and concerned. At your Friday's meeting, there was public comment about lack of a big question being who's driving the bus here. It was supposed to open in fall of last year. In fact, the website still says it's supposed to open in fall of last year. Then it was supposed to open in April. Then it's supposed to open Memorial Day. It's not opening. No one seems to be in charge. And what's going on?
It's a project we're working on. It's very dynamic. It not only involves actually doing renovations to the inside of that space, but it's also lining up tenants, doing educational pieces. So it's a very dynamic project that we're trying to figure out if we can do it the right way and when we do it.
And I would say that for a while, I'm trying to remember the dates, and I can't remember dates to save my soul right now. It was Harry who was leading that project, and Harry is now the interim. So again, I don't use this, but I think we had this discussion last year when we talked about budgets for the city itself. And I would put that to the DDA as well, that this isn't had months and months of evaluations and extra meetings when you've got people wearing, it's not even a 100-person staff there that's now delegating to other people. It's a 4-person, 5-person staff, depending on how we look at with parking. And the DDA, that's in the budget. We might decide it's not worth going forward with as well. I think, we were at the meeting and heard those comments as well. And I don't know that it's worth totally pursuing if it's going to end up being a burden, or at least not in the next year if it's going to end up being a burden on the staff we have and as we regroup. On a similar note, tentatively right now, June 7th has been held for our interviews for the 4 CEO candidates that were announced yesterday. So I say that as we are moving forward with getting more, much like we were in the position last year, moving forward with the plan to have some more permanent and final stability coming in one way, shape, or form.
Well, there was considerable frustration and lack of confidence expressed at the...
By the public comment?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, that's all I've got. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Tim.
A question, I think, for the folks at the end of the table, whether it's clerk's office or city attorney, but at our June meeting, we are required to approve a city commission budget. Are we required to approve DDA and TCLP budgets that night?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that all falls under the charter, and I would have to look at the DDA.
Okay,
Act.
the reason I ask is it is specific to the DDA.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's appropriate for the city manager to come to that meeting with some, I'll say, compromises in mind, because I would support a budget that acknowledges the possible winding down of TIF 97, but I know there's folks up here who would not support that. And so is there something somewhere in between if we're required to get to 5 votes in support of a DDA budget that night? So something that shows maybe it's not winding down TIF 97, but maybe not as full speed ahead as the current budget shows.
Correct me, what I took from the discussion, and maybe I'm wrong, that the DDA had itself and of its priorities was, we do have 2 years left on TIF 97 in the budgets, and spending the money that exists in TIF 97 currently, not basing all of it on the hope that it gets passed. So can you differentiate kind of what's in the budget as forecasting, if you will, and what is this fund balance that still exists right now?
I mean, certainly the DDA and the city commission will have to have conversations about what capital projects are priorities given the lifespan of TIF that we have, and thinking about, okay, what projects make sense given that time span, or if TIF was expended, what other physical projects or capital projects will we include. The projects that we included that have potentially longer terms than 2 years are, again, small bites of the apple that you can have the standalone projects that, if TIF was expended, could then contribute to a larger capital project. But the things that we're focusing on now can be done within the next couple of years.
And include that, I bring that up because as part of the Boardman restoration conversation was, here's what we can feasibly do, much like was mentioned, having an engineer look at some of these elements, including stormwater, and also this asking for what does our budget, not before the budget was passed, because budgets are projections, they're not exact everything. We place a lot in our budget that we don't end up doing. And that was mentioned was we would like to see going forward a budget that has TIF in it, or projections for projects that have TIF in it and that don't. So the DDA itself is talking about that as well. But the budget being put forward here is focusing mostly on, and through the eyes of the DDA members, at least in their discussions, what's going to be done in the next couple of years. I don't think that there was a lot in there that was prioritized or discussed that was, hey, in 10, over the next 5 years, we're going to do this, and over the next 10 years, this. That's in there as things we could potentially do, there, but that means they're there as things that would be taken off the list as well if TIF is not available. So I guess I would say that the feel on the board is definitely not, also, there is no TIF plan right now, right? The DDA has not passed one. They've had discussions, but there is nothing before us. So the DDA, I feel like the discussions, and correct me if you got the wrong impression to our CEO/executive director, that is not the view that was taken going into this budget. This budget was, we have a couple of years worth of spending on this part of TIF that exists, that's already approved. It's part of what was passed 30 years ago. And the other day-to-day stuff that we're looking at to get through, because again, we are dealing with an interim. I don't think anybody was trying to get into big visionary projects that we were going to make top priorities. It's kind of getting through what we need to do in the next couple of years. Any other questions or comments for Harry or anyone? Go ahead, Jackie.
I would just like to support Commissioner Werner's concept of a Plan B. I have my own concerns about the expenditures that are proposed within the current DDA budget, and whether we are investing funds in planning that may never be executed. And if we can look at that with a critical eye and perhaps have an alternative in your back pocket, I think that would be appreciated.
Well, then I'd have a follow-up question too, that if TIF money does go away, the Boardman restoration has been a priority of this entire community for years, and Mayor Pro Tem Wilson and I were even at an event of the community at large saying that that is one of the biggest restoration pieces we can do as a community to our Native American neighbors. Would we then, I don't think it'd be imperative that we take that out of any discussion, because that would then fall on us as a city to examine, do we want to pay for that and invest our money in that? So I understand what you're saying about wanting to know what this would look like without TIF money, but stormwater, Boardman restoration, and everything else still exists whether there's TIF money or not, or if the DDA is doing it or not. It would be then potentially a city project.
Perhaps it's good to look at this as a pause until we know the outcome of November balloting.
Well, the November ballot would be that we just have to vote on TIF before it could be potentially passed, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
I guess.
that's what the
Yeah.
charter amendment that's before us currently says. So, and that would mean that a future generation could say, nope, we don't want TIF if that does pass. It could mean that people say, yes, we do want TIF, and it passes. So
I think I'm being sensitive to having found just recently a situation where the city invested a great deal of time and effort in developing a strategic plan. In that case, it was around the healthier drinking culture, which I think we're going to have an opportunity to talk about a little more shortly. But developing plans that don't get executed, I'm sensitive to that, and I would hate to see us head down that same path with something as important as the Boardman-Ottaway River plans.
Commissioner Wilson, you.
It just kind of feels like we're undermining the purpose of the DDA board and looking to micromanage it. Some of the items on there seem to be that it should be at their discretion to vote on, and if we don't, I mean, if you don't want to pass their budget, you don't want to pass their budget, but I don't think that we should start taking on all the smaller details of everything within their budget.
And really quick to clarify a question of when we're talking, and I, to Commissioner Shaw's point of $1 million price tag on something, if the city were, or the DDA were to take what's left in the TIF now or a TIF in the future and want to spend $1 million on something, they would have to bond, correct, Harry? The DDA would have to
It depends
bond?
on the project. Anything that's multi-million dollars
Yes.
would have to be bonded for.
And a bond does have to come to the city commission for approval. That isn't something the DDA can do on its own. And so I guess what I'm trying to point out too is that as we talk about these larger projects, there are other checks baked into them. It's not a, well, this is in our budget for this year, it gets passed, and 3 years from now, they're gonna go spend millions of dollars if a TIF plan is accepted and renewed. All of that has checks on it as well as engineering. I mean, the discussion was to have a DDA engineer. I personally, as a member of that board, said I would be more supportive if it was either a contract or something that would meet with the city engineering to support on certain projects. A, because I don't want to fund a position that might not be funded for 2 years, if after 2 years. And B, because it is imperative that all of this work happens with, and that was definitely the message given through Harry's presentation, that this would all be with the engineering department, but the DDA offering with funds it has available some extra support because our, as was mentioned at our last meeting, our engineering staff is very taxed. So I don't think this would be the DDA going off and making plans on their own of a stormwater plan that they want to do or a Boardman restoration they want to do that has no city input on it and sits around. So, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, just, I mean, I think I hear the concern being expressed by the mayor pro tem about micromanaging, but that's why I asked the question, is this body required to approve a DDA budget at our June meeting? And if we're required to approve it and we macromanage, we just say thumbs up or thumbs down, if there aren't 5 votes to give it a thumbs up, then there's no budget. And then city manager and the folks at the end of the table here have to say, okay, well, how do they get 5 votes thumbs up out of us? And that's where, you can call it micromanaging, but essentially what's being offered is ideas for them to have in their hip pocket for that night, should they need them, to get 5 affirmative votes.
We are not able to go and, actually I should ask this, are we even able to go and amend the DDA budget and pass it when it has passed to the DDA in a certain form already?
So what the act says about the DDA budget is that it's prepared and approved with the same information as other municipal departments. So it's part of the city commission's budget process in the same way as the other departments. So, but that before the budget can be adopted by the DDA board, it has to be approved by the city commission. So that's the process that we're working with.
Okay.
Does that mean that the city commission can amend the DDA budget?
It means that the city commission, similarly to Light and Power, can give a yes or no, but it's not a line by line. So it would be up to the DDA board to make those choices of what it wants to present to this board, and not to the city manager what is presented to this board for that budget.
And the DDA just met on Friday, and we vote on our budget in June. And so there is no time for the board to give input to potentially change their own budget, is where we're kind of at.
I guess I would ask city attorney to continue to look into it, and maybe share an email with the city commission. So if there are not 5 votes and we can't change it, do we go home at midnight and we're in violation of some public act, whatever, of the state of Michigan? Like what's?
I think it's.
You don't have to answer it now, but if you could get back to us, like the what if.
And that would be if we also didn't get 5 votes because of some of the requests about the TCLP budget as well, correct? I guess one of the questions I have as we're having this conversation before it goes to just not approving the budget is, of the items that there were the concerns about the price tags attached to, could we summarize those? Because some of those will have to, again, larger spending items due to certain mechanisms come to us for approval, for not for contracts though, right? For bonding, what else comes to us from DDA when we need it?
If there are capital improvements that are being done to city property, they all come to the city commission for those contracts.
So that would be river walks and things like that, right?
Right.
So that's another important thing to remember is, yes, the DDA creates its own budget, but much as if you go think back on the budget or the agendas we've had over the last couple of months, things come to us of approving this item or approving access to or other things like that. We don't have they have independence to create contracts, the DDA, the TCLP does as well, but we have to do that with certain permissions even when we're outside the lines of TCLP and their property that they have as part of that line, their oversight. So major structural changes in the city, including parking if everything goes forward, will come to us no matter what. Budgets aren't just passed in a vacuum and then checks written and we see everybody in a year. I think we all know that because we vote on it every week. So I would just add that to everyone as well before we go down that, potentially the road of not passing a budget when some of the major concerns might be things that have to come back to us anyways. So perhaps we could get to staff about, and copy Lauren on it, about some of the issues that we have some questions about the spending and see if those are ones that will come back to us no matter what.
How many times have we faced this before?
Face not passing a budget or?
Yeah.
Not to my knowledge.
So I would also like to request a breakdown of the concerns in the DDA budget and how those align or don't align with anything that's in TCLP. I don't think it's very likely that we wouldn't pass a TCLP budget. I do think that we're going beyond micromanaging to a direct attack on and a desire to see implode our DDA, and having lived through the 90s here and what it looked like before we had some of the revitalization, I certainly don't want to see a return to that. So I hope that we are applying a similar standard to both budgets, even though one is a public utility and one is the heart and soul of our community and our economic center.
Thank you, Commissioner Stanley. Do we have other questions at this time? All right, so could we please have the, between city manager and city attorney, let us know the items, well, first of all, from the commissioners, concerns about individual line items on the DDA. Please get those to Lauren minimally, but Lauren and Liz preferably. And we can have that verified if those will come back to us throughout the course of the year if they were to be acted on.
I just want to make clear, though, if that list comes back, is this board expecting that goes back to the DDA board and
No.
we do a back and forth? So can
No,
we
this
talk
would-
about the process?
Yeah, this is where I'm getting at, is I think a lot of the concerns that I'm hearing, a lot of the end results of if everything in the budget were to happen, which is unlikely, much of that work would have to come to the city commission for approval before it could actually take place. If that is the case, then my question would be to my colleagues, is this just going to become a protest vote to say no to the DDA, or would that be enough to say, okay, that is the oversight we are looking for, that knowing that these things, certain items won't be able to happen without the city's approval? And that's a question we could have at the June meeting.
Mayor Shamrock?
Yes.
I would like, if it's okay, for the city attorney to give me some advice on what this board can legally ask me to do vis-a-vis the DDA. These are two separate bodies. And so I believe I heard my name saying to work with Harry, but I feel like
No.
there's a conflict there. And I want some very clear understanding of what was being asked and what this body can and cannot do.
Well, what Lauren has already said is that the budget presented by the DDA is what's presented, board and approved, is presented to us right now. You and Harry could talk all you want over the next 2 weeks, and unless the DDA board met again, amended their budget, and represented it, that would not be what we would be voting on anyways.
But it's also, it sounded like they're being asked to speculate on what's going to get to 5 votes here.
Right, but this is what I'm saying, is the items of concern from commissioners, I wanted Liz, let me clarify, that's a good question. Liz copied so that she understands what the questions and concerns are, because she is our city manager. Lauren would be the one to give us the legal opinion of, yes, this item because of X would come back to us for a vote, or this item because of Y would be approved at the DDA level and not brought to the city.
Commissioner Werner said that you didn't have to answer it tonight and that we could get an email later, but it does worry me, the one concern he brought up, and if you have any insight into that, like what type of, what is to come if we don't pass this?
I mean, that's a general question that gets asked about, what if you don't pass the city budget? And
Yeah.
I think prior to my time, it has come up with the light and power budget, when there was more contentious relationship with that board. What if we don't pass the light and power budget? Then the general consensus among city attorneys is that you operate under the prior budget until that is corrected.
Okay. So
It's not like we send
like
all,
an
all of our
evergreen-
employees home and we don't do the public health, safety, and welfare work that needs to be done. You would operate under the prior budget.
I trust in that, but I would very much like to make sure that we aren't going to have a vote that lends people to be laid off.
All right. Or we won't all be here negotiating at like 3 in the morning, or?
No, that's not how we work. It's up or down, because again, the DDA has passed us their budget. Unless they meet again in between and come out, represent a new budget to us, we are voting on the budget that has been presented to us. Which is why I'm asking good faith that those who have concerns and questions, direct them to the city attorney and find out if those concerned items will eventually be back in front of us. Because if they are, then I would hope that would assuage some fears or concerns, and that we could pass this budget and know that we will have more input on some of those items that have concern. That is my hope for this board. Are there any other questions? Go ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo that sentiment that we have a process for, I would call them departmental style budgets for something that operates as a separate department, the DDA or Traverse City Light and Power. And if members of the public or members of this board are interested in seeing how that process is unfolded, they are more than welcome to have attended the DDA or TC Light and Power meetings and to have raised those concerns or start asking questions much sooner than when it finally comes to us. And now it is coming up to us for a public review. There is not really time for us to say, we like these elements, we don't like these elements, and then to go back to the DDA for them to rehash and say, okay, now this is an amended budget.
Excellent point, Commissioner Treadwell. And also, I do think that some of the faces in this room were in the DDA meetings and at the budget meeting and did not make a public comment at that time, so that is an excellent point as well. Seeing no more discussion, we will follow up with ours. Thank you, Harry, for your time. We are going to skip item number 2. We will go to the parking services agreement now.
Thank you, Mayor Shamro. At the April 8th and April 29th study sessions, the commission discussed assuming operations of the parking management services, which is currently provided by the Downtown Development Authority. The DDA Board of Trustees is slated to take this matter up at its May 17th meeting. While at that meeting, the DDA Board may vote to send the city notice of termination. I am also recommending the City Commission to do so at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have questions about this item ahead of time? We've had some presentations, or I would take a motion.
I'll make a motion that the City Commission authorizes the city manager to send a notice to the interim CEO of the Downtown Development Authority that the City of Traverse City is providing its notice to terminate the parking services management contract dated June 19th, 2003, as provided in the contract.
Support.
Thank you, Stanley and Wilson. Any further comments from up on the commission here? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you for that all. And let's see if we can push through a little bit here. Actually, I'm going to be nice tonight and take a break at new business because we have so many students. It's about 9 o'clock. I think even with seniors, you've got some classes left for you. So please, we're going to take about a 5-minute break here. Come up to any of us up here or even staff over there. We can all sign your sheets. And let's let you sign your sheets and get on with your evenings, and then we will resume our business.
But you have to tell us what we just discussed and your understanding of it.
I know, I did think about it, actually. That's why I went like this, and then I went like Hey, guys.
You need a signature.
What's today, 5:20?
Hi there.
Down here? Oh, here.
There you go. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being patient. You guys did well. Might still be daylight. Might be like daylight still when you guys get out. I don't know about us, but.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, interesting stuff, huh? Budget night's the night where you get to see everything.
Oh, there you go.
Here we go. Thanks for being here.
See if you get extra credit.
We did hear a rumor one of the last meetings that you got extra credit if you made
Public comment, so must not be your teachers. Not that night.
Hi.
No problem, guys. Have a good night.
Is it the last possible? I forgot to email the whole thing.
I wrote my title so they can look me up if they couldn't read my writing. We've got a couple people down here. People are waiting.
Hi, Louis.
Learn a lot or what?
See, we cut it off just in time.
What you learned today?
Actually, I am
Is it all
gonna.
the same teacher?
Yeah.
I'm gonna take
Different teachers? Oh, well. I hope
It can be
Thank
rewarding.
you. Bye-bye.
Can, yeah, from time to time. Thank you. Yeah, see ya.
You might win.
You're not getting it signed by Mark?
I wasn't gonna call you out for sleeping.
But that's being encouraged.
We
sounds
were
like.
in the middle of this deep discussion.
I've heard
I love
everything.
your optimism.
This is an issue.
Sarah's gonna win.
What'd you do now, Mitch?
No, Nicole, I
We don't
think.
need a new pizza.
Yeah.
I don't know, the alley pizza is
Hit on the
closed
corner on the pavement when I got hit.
on Mondays.
Last week.
Yeah, I heard about that. You're okay?
Mostly.
Wake up, Anthony.
I'll give a statement.
No, you don't need to.
No,
I'm-
well, we can statement
Yes.
in the
I
end.
did pull
But yeah, this zipper is,
Okay.
less than functional right now.
I'll see what we have around the office, okay?
It's not.
How early did you get here?
You live across the street.
Oh, yeah, they're open till like 2 a.m.
Are they by Reduno?
Yeah.
I
It's
do.
actually like good.
Sonic
Oh, that's exactly
Exactly
what I
what
want.
That's exactly what I want. Earlier today, I was like, I just want a piece of greasy pizza. Yeah, that's exactly, highly recommend.
Yeah, we're actually going.
Up until 1 a.m.
Y'all cleared the room.
Lots of
I don't know, I mean, I don't.
Yes. Single, round, or deep dish?
So you did. You can't do it online?
Hey, we're still way ahead of last time, which was very good, our longer meeting.
Do I have time to order a piece of pizza from Dino's on my way home?
Oh, for sure, on your way home. Okay, do we have, oh, we're still missing 2 people. First one back, I get to start the meeting again. I mean, technically we have a quorum, but I'll be nice.
Yep, she's putting chairs away. Overachiever.
She is. Thank you, Nicole.
Christine Interby helped set them up.
I'm really
Oh,
gonna ask.
that was nice of her, too. Wow, that really cleared out the room, didn't it?
Mostly. I'll be making a statement towards the end.
Bernier said that's not working. Thought I saw a hat out there. Is that a hat? Okay, good. I'm so nearsighted, I can't tell.
Yeah, no, it was,
Okay, we'll wait for Mark to get back then. I was like, if that's him out there talking, I'll just yell at him on the mic. But
which would be great.
I have tried to do that before, but I was so busy he didn't hear me. We'll start in just a minute. We'll wait for every commissioner to have, our well-hydrated commission to have a quick break here. right. We have a lot of very happy students that have left the room and the rest of us here to finish on or continue on with our business. Under new business, we have consideration of adopting a resolution recommending approval of a request. And I believe this is, and I'll put this to Liz and/or Sarah, this is the addition to an already existing permit. Is that correct?
No, that's
This
the
is a
other
new
one.
one.
This is
Okay,
a new one.
Sorry. I
The
flipped them
second
around.
one is an addition.
Yes.
Yes.
sorry. So, quick presentation on this. This was pulled during an agenda review. I guess I'm going to take this moment again. I think I've shared it once recently, but just to let everybody know and kind of give an update. Before we have a business meeting, we do what is called an agenda review. It used to always just be the mayor and the city manager, and then we started, years ago, they started including another commissioner. A tradition was started relatively recently of including post-COVID basically, of including the mayor pro tem as well, in case they were needed to fill in for the meeting. They would be updated as well instead of just anticipated changes, or instead of anticipated vacations. So because of that, you will see often our consent calendar looks a lot lighter than it used to, and that's because with 3 people's input, we get more questions asked ahead of time, but then we also are able to anticipate where there might be some questions. So because this was a liquor license issue, it was decided that we would pull it in case anybody had any comments. So go ahead at that, Sarah. Thank you. Sorry for letting me have my moment.
No, that's okay. So this is a request from High Five Spirits LLC. They're manufacturing out of Petoskey, Charlevoix area. So they're requesting a new off-premise tasting room, small distillery license with a dance, entertainment, and Sunday AM, PM sales permits. So this is going to be down on 309 West Front Street,
Barrio.
Barrio area. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yes. Try to do a landmark everybody knows. So I can answer, hopefully, any specific questions anybody has regarding this.
And again, I wanted to just share, this is a pretty straightforward request. We didn't pull it because there was anything unique about it. It's just a newer establishment that would be down then on that west side towards kind of past the kind of heart 2 blocks of Front Street. Yeah. So if anybody has questions, go ahead.
I just have a question. Are all the Sunday operating hours from 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. the next day?
I
Do
believe
we have
that is.
any control over that? I mean, are they all like that? Are the bars all open at 7 o'clock in the morning?
Some of it depends on the type of license. If you have a redevelopment license, our ordinance shrinks down their operating hours to, I believe, midnight. But this is not that type of license. So the Sunday AM, PM sales.
A lot of the establishments that have liquor licenses in our community have
You can go home
that.
for 3 hours or wander around for 3 hours and you can get right back into it.
Yep.
Have
Yep.
some mimosas, then they would-
Most of our liquor licenses under this operate that way. I think we'd find that very rarely can we go at 7 a.m. Actually, several third shifters are disappointed that you can't find a lot of places here at 7 a.m. to grab a drink when they're getting out of the hospital or off their shift. But yeah, so this is pretty standard. It's just how it's worded. So good question. Interesting point. Go ahead, Jim.
Along those lines, not for the downtown core because of the C4, whatever zoning, so that's like as open as any place, but aren't, like in C1 or C2, if doesn't zoning sometimes limit hours of operation? I guess, sorry, I was mumbling on, but that was where I was trying to go with the question. Sometimes zoning, but not in this case because it's C4.
Yes.
Just one more thing. I believe that we have a study session coming up to talk about the healthy drinking culture.
Study, yes.
Yes. In next month?
Well, there have been some commissioners making requests for other study sessions, and I'm not sure that we'll be able to do both in the month of June.
Okay, so, but later on then?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, it is slated for study session in the next month to 2 months, yes.
Great.
Go ahead, Jackie.
I just wanted to offer an explanatory note. I'll be voting against this one and item number 2 under new business. I tracked down the Healthier Drinking Culture Strategic Plan from October 2021, and the number 1 immediate action step in that strategic plan was for us to update the Traverse City ordinances and the local liquor license permit process to create objective and clear criteria for the desired number, type, and location of liquor licenses, including at the neighborhood and corridor level. I'm obviously disappointed that hasn't happened in 2.5 years. And I am, if you'd like to consider it a protest vote, but I would like to be assured that we're making forward progress on that plan before we approve additional liquor licenses in the city. So,
Mitch,
that's
sorry,
it.
yep, sorry, Mitch, go ahead.
Yes, and I suppose it may come to no surprise to anybody in attendance, but I similarly will once again raise objections to the fact that had been on our to-do list essentially a couple years ago, and we still haven't tackled it. Dealing with, and this is not every liquor license review, but specifically in the cases of relocating liquor licenses from one neighborhood to another, or in this case, from an entirely separate community into our downtown area. The Healthier Drinking Culture study was the result of feelings of overconcentration of liquor licenses in certain areas of our downtown, and specifically their proximity to other liquor licenses so that people could go from one bar to another. And each bar might have played a much smaller role in over-serving ultimately, but collectively it does cause issues for our community. I do wish to see the west end of Front Street become a little more vibrant, and a restaurant at this location could be part of that. But until we've looked at the Healthier Drinking Culture study and seen that there actually is appetite for more liquor licenses, especially extended hours liquor licenses in our downtown area, I feel I have no choice but to oppose this.
So there's nothing to oppose right now because we don't have a motion. Would somebody like to make a motion? Okay. Seeing none? Oh, we move on?
I think you've got your protest votes, and I don't feel that I'm not going to deny, I'm not going to vote against this, because you haven't done anything over 2 years, and here these people are, but you know now that we need to do something in the future. So you've had your red flag. I move that the resolution recommending approval of the request from High Five Spirits LLC, Michael S. Kazanowski and Adam S. Kazanowski, to issue to it a new off-premises tasting room for small distillery license and with dance entertainment on Sunday sales, AM, PM, permits be adopted, and that the city clerk be authorized to issue a liquor license registration to High Five Spirits LLC for it to operate such license and permits at 309 West Front Street, Traverse City, Michigan 49684.
I will support.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Shaw, and second from Pro Tem Wilson. Go ahead, Tim.
Question about the map and the permit. So I guess the map and the permit together. It's not clearly indicated that there's outdoor seating. Does that mean there is not outdoor seating, or how does a permit like this work? And I only ask because the next item clearly has outdoor seating.
Sure. For them to have outdoor seating, they would need to request an outdoor service permit.
Right.
That request was not included on this application, so we would not be issuing that. So they would not have outdoor seating permitted for the consumption of alcohol.
Thank you. And the reason I bring that up is the whole proximity to residential neighborhoods, as we were discussing how late they could be open, et cetera. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions from the commission? Any public comment on this item? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
No.
Commissioner Stanley,
Yeah.
Commissioner Werner,
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell,
No?
Commissioner Shaw,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes. I guess it doesn't matter which way I do this one. So after this, I would like to say, you know, we have it slated over the last couple of years. There's been a lot of turmoil with leadership, changes in leadership and other things. I understand that people think that that has been a great neglect on the part of the city, and that is, everyone's entitled to what they think about the process. What I would say, though, and I'm looking forward to the study session to highlight this, is case in point, the mention of people being overserved and going bar to bar. Well, one of the recommendations from that study was that, because the owners were involved and managers, was to create a network to share when people have been 86th, for example, and that happens. There's a WhatsApp group. We brought it up as I was asking about it to Officer Culver at our DDA meeting on Friday morning. There's two separate ones. There's one for retailers to kind of see if anybody's suspicious or if they suspect somebody has like shoplifted, to share that with others. There's another one for bar owners and bar managers, so that when that does happen, pictures, descriptions, whatever they can get have been shared. That was a direct result of the better drinking culture. We also issue our own permits. So if Lara could issue a permit to somebody, and if somebody is violating here in town, even if Lara doesn't want to do anything about it, which is the state regulating agency, we can pull their permits and stop them from exercising their licensing. So while I appreciate that we have to have this bigger conversation and the numbers, I think we have seen, and I'm looking forward to having this conversation, that the ability for us to maintain and control and watch our own licensing has made a huge impact already, regardless if there are 3 bars in a row, because they're communicating with each other and they know they have to ultimately have our permission to operate. So I just wanted to share that as we go through. I think there's been some comments that may imply that literally nothing happened from the better drinking culture. One item has not happened yet. It may or may not based on our discussions, but there has been action. And I appreciate Commissioner Shaw's point that at this point it's on us to have that conversation, so we have some business to take care of, but I did want to point out too that there has been other progress. Okay, moving on to item number 2 under old business. We're under old, right? New business, sorry. This is the Kayak Bike and Brew sampling event, and I'll hand it back to you, Sarah.
Sure. So this is the adopting a resolution authorizing the new consumer sampling event license, new entertainment permit, Sunday sales AM, PM permit, outdoor service areas, 2 permits, direct connection permits for Kayak Bike and Brew. This is an establishment that we have already issued a liquor license to. We are aligning the permits with what the MLCC is issuing also. So our permits and their permits need to align.
So this is almost a housekeeping.
Almost a housekeeping, yes.
Go ahead, Tim.
Well, I guess we can get to the housekeeping, but either way, as far as what's the housekeeping part and what's really being permitted here, my concern, and I sent an email, it was late today because I didn't look at it thoroughly enough, to the city clerk's office, and there was a response with the map showing where the outdoor seating is. It's along Front Street as well as the north edge of their property. Sorry, there's a map in here and it's kind of shown, but it's hard to interpret, or I had a tough time interpreting. But so there's 2 outdoor seating areas, and the northern outdoor seating is adjacent to, maybe not immediately, maybe there's 5 feet between, I'm not sure, but it's against a residential neighborhood. It's the first home on Oak Street. And so I can't support, not with the, like I see in here, they say, you know, only till 10 p.m., but there's a family living there with young children, and it's that even a low murmur, like it's not, I don't know, I just can't, put it out on Front Street, that's great, have it inside, that's great, but alcohol service immediately abutting. I know sometimes we've had it across the alley, Silver Spruce is just across the alley, but immediately abutting, because it's abutting their side yard between their garage and their home. So it's not like it's across the alley and there's a garage buffering any sort of noise. So proximity is just a concern for me here.
Mhm.
Everything else I'm fine with, but I don't know that we have the ability to carve out certain aspects.
Is this a 4 or a 5 vote, just out of curiosity?
4.
4, okay. So questions or concerns or more questions, comments, or a motion? Go ahead, Mitch.
Yes, I would like to stress that compared to the last motion, this one is a pre-existing liquor license, and even though, yes, they are asking for more hours and outdoor seating and some other things that are changes, they do not, this is not a business that exists as a bar, a brewery, a distillery, or the like. They are primarily serving as bicycle and kayak-based touring, but there are, say, either a brewery that is not as bike-friendly as they'd like to be, that wants to still have their product available, or critically, if people have reserved a kayak or bike tour, but the weather is not agreeable for kayaking or biking, as sometimes happens, they are then able to still host that tour group at their premises.
Okay. Did you want to make a motion?
Yes, and with that, I will make the motion. I recommend that the commission adopt the resolution recommending approval of this request. Also, this...
Oh, no, all the way to the
Wait,
top.
no,
Yeah,
sorry.
that's okay. We all do that every night, I think.
Recommendation, that the city commission approve the new consumer sampling event license, new Sunday sales AM/PM permit, new entertainment permit, new outdoor service area 2X permits, and new direct connection 1 permit, and that the city clerk be authorized to issue a liquor license registration for Kayak Bike and Brew LLC for it to operate such license and permits at 436 West Front Street, Traverse City, Michigan 49684.
A second?
Support.
Okay, Commissioner Treadwell. Commissioners, hold on just one moment. We'll get to the discussion, just one moment. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, just in a bigger picture, complexity of it all. The house on Oak Street that looks more like it would have been built in Chicago, I believe it's on the agenda at the June Board of Zoning Appeals, whatever we call that, trying to get permission to have short-term rental in that home. And if you look at the packet, there's a draft out there. The folks petitioning to have it changed label this part of Front Street and down Gillis, is Gillis the tiny
Gillis,
street
yep.
there? They're labeling it like the drunk district or something just terrible. And that's their reasoning for wanting to join the party culture is, oh, it's already like a lost whatever, so let us be part of that as well. That's that 8-bedroom, 10-bathroom house. I have nothing against 8-bedroom, 10-bathroom homes, but to turn it into a party central because, well, let's just give up and make it all party central. To me, I know it's just a tiny thing, but having a bar abut somebody's backyard, it doesn't help us. Not us, but just as far as trying to say, no, this is residential. Yes, we have bars, but there's a little bit of something between them. So that's why I'm voting no.
That's fair, Commissioner Warner, and I appreciate the comments about it being right next door to a house. What I will say is, as far as referencing that appeal that is coming before us, I believe that property in particular had has had some arguments made by attorneys since it was conceived, because it was conceived on the assumption that it was in a business district and it was not, and then when it was found out it was not in a commercial district, then the argument became, then several arguments have been since presented to argue that it's basically a commercial district when it's not and it's a neighborhood. So while I appreciate your concern about proximity, I think an attorney labeling something a party zone is not necessarily what I think we would have to go with our zoning preferences. So go ahead, Mr.
Yeah,
Treadwell.
speaking as a member of the Board of Zoning Appeals, that property owner has already come before the BZA with that same request and been rejected once. And the, quote, party zone is not because of this business alone, but spreading that I would say, misdirected reputation to Folgarelli's because they sell wine, and Burritt's across the street because they also sell wine.
Thank you for that insight from your board service, Mr. Treadwell. So we do have a motion, we do have a second by Treadwell and Mayor Pro Tem Wilson. Is there any other comment from the commission? Any public comment on this item? Now, please feel free, and we can give extra time. Oh, sorry, Stanley was. I was reading my note from earlier, sorry. Okay, and we can have any comments on this as anybody would like, please.
Hello, I'm Jeff Bensley. I'm here from Kayak Bike and Brew, so I can answer any questions if anyone has any specifically about any of the diagrams or anything. I also want to clear up, just to make sure we're all on the same page, that this is a bar where you could walk in and get a drink on a Thursday night, regardless of whether you're on the tour or not.
I know 10 p.m. was mentioned. Is that the operating hour?
Yeah, right now I think the MLCC gave us at 11 p.m. But when we talked about the outdoor service area, we thought that being courteous to our neighbors, we wanted to have that at 10 p.m. for one that.
Thank you. And actually, because I accidentally went out of order and as my time of night, though we have this in the public comment portion, I should have brought him up as a petitioner during our discussion. Does anyone have any direct comments for the representative here from Kayak Bike and Brew? Go ahead, Heather.
Yeah, do you have an indoor area where you're serving alcohol right now?
Yes.
So this would be just something additional, and there's only one outdoor space, and it's the one that abuts the residents?
Yeah, there's two outdoor spaces. We did our permit a year ago, but when we filled out the city part, we didn't realize that we had to ask for permission for the Sunday part and ask for permission for the outdoor part. So we've recently completed our MLCC stuff, and then they reached out to us to get it all on the same page. And so I guess the answer to your question is there will be two outdoor, one on the north side, one on the south side.
So one would abut the
But we also serve
residents and
inside.
one wouldn't? Okay.
Correct. But we also serve inside.
Okay. Any other questions? Did you want to make any, because since I messed up the order, I'm sorry. Did you want to make any other final comments before we open up to the rest of the public comment?
I don't think so.
Thank you. No,
Thanks for your time.
sorry, I messed up the order, so I didn't want to make you feel like you were just getting kicked off too. So thank you. Any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Anderson?
No.
Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Werner?
No.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Shaw?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes. Sorry, I lost count. Did that pass? Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Sorry about that. All right. So moving forward here, we have a presentation by Traverse Connect. Mr. Warren Call is here with us, so please, thank you for your patience as we've made our way through our agenda here.
Thank you, my pleasure. I think it's good to have the students see some good civics lessons as we work through the evening. I appreciate everyone sticking around and working with us, hearing from Traverse Connect to update. First off, I want to say thank you for the opportunity here, and thanks for the ongoing partnership that we have had with the city, covering our economic development initiatives. On behalf of our board of directors, it's something that we do appreciate the partnership. I'm going to touch on a couple of key points. Given the time and given everything you've worked on, I'll only touch on highlights and then specifically talk a little bit more detail about the goals and metrics that were developed with the city's partnership back in 2019. And provide you with an update on that, and then go into a few other comments and answer any questions you might have, and I'm going to bet that you might have some good questions. So with that, in your packet is an economic development milestone highlight. I'll start with that. We do have a link on that piece in the packet that goes to the full set of reports that we provide to you. Again, we provide an annual report. We provide a biannual economic development ecosystem report, and then we provide quarterly growth barometer reports. So we do have the link there to all those. But I'll just touch on a couple of key things.
In the area of industry cluster development across our Blue Tech, outdoor recreation, and manufacturing initiatives, we've had a number of things develop and continue to move forward in a positive way. I'll just highlight one example, the partnership with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation's Office of Future Mobility and Electrification. We initiated the Fresh Coast Maritime Challenge, first in the country, grant program for technology development in post-carbon marine transportation. Under our talent attraction and talent retention efforts, I would highlight actually an idea that came from this body. We had put out with some partners, a regional wage study. And when we presented that, one of the comments that we got back from the city and city leadership was that they would encourage and would like to be looking at the full compensation for area residents. So that's where we came through with the Grand Traverse Regional Employer Benefits Survey. So providing not just wage information, but comprehensive benefits information. Again, an idea that came from this body. I'd also highlight that we have been asked to partner again with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation in the development of their new statewide talent attraction initiative that is called You Can in Michigan. Our team here at Traverse Connect was actually tasked with providing the state with examples and with materials and with a roadmap, as it were. They, in effect, followed our Creative Coast program, our Michigan's Creative Coast program, in designing the state-level program. So we were viewed as a model and an example at the state level for talent attraction. In the community development, infrastructure and ecosystem development section, we've spent a lot of time on a lot of initiatives around housing. I won't belabor all of those. Just more to say that, as you all know, we've had some very strong successes and we still have a lot of work to do as a community in housing. The work continues, and I would highlight a couple of things from our most recent reports that we've issued out to you this year. First off, on the policy front, we have continued to work with our policy arm, the Northern Michigan Chamber Alliance, and through our events such as the Northern Michigan Policy Conference to further the infrastructure needs of Northern Michigan. We have a very real possibility and have some good traction on some placemaking funding in the current year's budget that is set to be discussed and approved. That includes funding for Fish Pass, funding for supportive housing, and other initiatives that are a priority of the city. Working with partners across the community again, one thing we wanted to highlight was the work with Interlochen Center for the Arts and Northwest Michigan Arts and Culture Network. That's to develop a strategy whereby we more inherently and intently promote the arts and cultural amenities in our region, including those in the city, and use that as one of those championing of assets in order to, again, fulfill our mission to diversify the economy and grow family-sustaining jobs. We see that arts and cultural amenities are a key driver as people are selecting where they want to live. And as I think we've talked about before, in modern economic development, place generates talent attraction then generates business development and eventually job creation. So that's a key mover. I'd also touch on welcoming Central Michigan University's Innovation Center on rural health and innovation and online learning that we are welcoming to the Traverse Connect building. So we continue to see more higher education institutions express interest and invest in the region, which is positive, again, for talent development. And then finally, again, going back to the Creative Coast program that I mentioned, we've gone live with a couple of resources, again, with your help, moving to Traverse City Resource Guide and relocating to Traverse City Resource Guide with logistics like housing, childcare, etc. The final thing I would highlight, recent development, is working with partners on the 3rd annual Northern Michigan Startup Week. That was hosted here at the end of April, and brought hundreds of people to downtown Traverse City to learn about the exciting things happening in our early stage companies, our growth companies, companies that are creating jobs in innovative markets, innovative technologies, and something that continues to be a priority for us as we work with our public sector partners to continue to diversify the economy. And that's really what this is all about. We want to have a strong economy across traditional sectors like tourism, like agriculture, but we know we need to continue to diversify into newer sectors, into more year-round sectors, if we're going to maintain and grow from a sustainability standpoint. So that's a key focus. Now I would switch to the material that's up on the screen here, the regional dashboard. But before I get into all of those details, I think it's worth maybe pausing to explain a little bit of background. Going back to 2018, 2019. The city and their leadership were actually at the forefront of this dashboard before you, and in fact, the entire strategic plan that these numbers come from. We worked with city leadership at the time. The city manager was on the steering committee, along with other public and private sector leaders. And the commissioners were involved in actually setting these priorities. So as we go through our metrics and dashboards and our deliverables as they were, these goalposts were set with city leadership. I won't belabor all of the details on here, but what I will touch on is the key metrics. As anyone who was involved in those strategic planning sessions may recall, the big concern for us as a community, and especially in the city, but also across the region, was the decline of the core working age population of 35 to 49-year-olds. That is why that was set as the primary goal, to reverse that decline and to hopefully start gaining back that core demographic that provides leadership in our businesses, in our nonprofit organizations, in our public sector bodies, and of course fuels viability for our school systems. So that is trending positive, as is educational attainment across not just bachelor's and associate's degrees, but post-secondary certificates. That is a development that has worked really well with some of the customized programs that NMC has put together. So we continue to work with our partners on that. We also want to make sure that we're growing professional technology, IT, and other STEM-related jobs and positions. That is a metric that has improved over the last several years, but has, over the last year, not gone into reverse, but it has stalled. And that's due to a couple larger employers, actually in the city, that reduced headcount. So we've had some progress there, but there is more work to be done. The same goes for wage level. This is the metric that all of us picked out to specifically reverse that old saying of a view of the bay is half the pay. We have gone from 82% approximately, 84% of the state average wage. We've grown that to 86%. This last year, that number did not improve, so that's where it's a little bit of a yellow sign right now. But we are trending toward the goal of getting more in line with the state average so that we're more competitive. And then the final thing is making sure that while we want to grow all industry and opportunity and employment in the region, we specifically want to grow the higher margin, higher value types of roles. And so you see that in the GDP per employee. That number has increased significantly from about 64,000 when the strategic plan was built, and is trending toward that ultimate goal of 25% increase, 84,000 per year annual GDP. So I thought it was helpful to not just give you those numbers, which we give you in the reports that you've received recently, but to call them out because this is why the entire community originally came together. It was to address these things, and it was actually under the city's leadership with other partners that we have made progress on them. So since the original strategic plan was laid out there, we had partnerships with the city in 2021, 2022, and 2023 on service agreements to address these issues. and we've made significant progress, and I would argue proof of concept for the partnerships that have been put out there. On the reverse side, again, with the in the interest of time, you have already been provided these, as you are every quarter, with our growth barometer report. But just to pull out, we don't just provide those annual metrics. We do provide this quarterly sentiment tracking. So as you can see from the most recent growth barometer survey, 98% of employers in the region believe that this is a good place to grow a business, and 81% believe it's improving. And as you can see in the bar graphs, those trends have continued to improve over time. So we want to call that out for you, because I know that whenever you're looking at a contractual arrangement, especially one that is public-private partnership in nature, it's important to track it. It's important to see if things are being delivered, and so we wanted to highlight those metrics for you. With that, I will touch on one final item and then answer any questions you might have. And that is, again, going back to where we all started with the city's leadership in this. I think it's important to note that it has paid off. So we have been able to build over time, again, starting back in 2019, we now have 27 private sector organizations that are invested at $10,000 a year or above in this set of metrics in this plan. We have many of those, again, investing in these metrics that are well in excess of that. We have public sector partners. Traverse City Light and Power was mentioned earlier. We have Grand Traverse County. We have the airport. We have the Traverse City DDA. We have Garfield Township. We have East Bay. And most recently, we have the Grand Traverse County Economic Development Corporation, in addition to the county. And in fact, that Economic Development Corporation contract is written in such a way that it is bringing all 16 municipalities inside the county together to make sure that everyone is working together and coordinating on these development initiatives. So that's some of the many things that we wanted to share with you from this partnership. There is a draft 3-year agreement in the packet for your review. I'm happy to answer questions either specifically on that or on some of our bigger initiatives. Again, I do think it's relevant that we have been able to take the city's initial investment and leverage it, and now have 3-year agreements with some of the public sector partners I've already mentioned. So I will pause there, and again, happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Jackie.
I'd like to be sure I'm understanding clearly the data that you brought to us. Thank you very much for that. On the dashboard numbers, the percentages that you have noted there, are those the baseline where you began at in 2018, 2019? Do they reflect progress over the 5-year period since then? Please help me understand
Yes,
those.
the large metrics on the left-hand side are the current metrics as of roughly April 1st of this year. So that's when numbers come out from the Census Bureau and the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So those are 2023 numbers that are published at the end of the first quarter in 2024. So for example, that first number I mentioned, we had a 10% decline in that 35 to 49 year age category. And when we built the strategic plan in 2019, the community wanted to see that trend reverse and hopefully have a 5% growth in that population by 2030.
Great.
We are actually ahead of trend there, so we've actually had 7% growth since 2019 in that age demographic.
Great, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Thank you. And then on the quarterly growth barometer, what kind of response rate do you have when you survey? I mean, what's the sample size approximately?
The sample size is, well, it depends on what you mean by sample size. We have 8,000 email addresses.
Right.
But that's because we have multiple people, multiple contacts in companies and at the city and in other, nonprofit employers, et cetera. So we have just south of 1,000 member organizations. It's like 950. Of that, we tend to get somewhere between 75 and 125 responses from the survey. So we get somewhere between 10 and 15% on a quarterly basis, survey response rate.
Do you have any concerns about non-response error, that those people you don't hear from maybe have distinctive viewpoints from those that you do hear from?
Actually, if you look at sample size and response rate across not just economic development agencies or Chamber of Commerce, that is a pretty significant response rate and makes it so the results are statistically significant.
Okay.
Did I not provide clarity?
I'm just, in terms of non-response error, having that substantial a portion not answering, you really can't tell. You really don't know what's on their mind because you haven't heard from them. So it's, yeah, you could, depending upon how broadly dispersed the data is, 75 to 125 could create very reliable information. But with that large a group simply not answering, it's kind of hard to know. That's all.
Actually, that's not true. If, again, looking at statistical models, and I'm not speaking on behalf of just the surveys that we conduct. I'm talking about the entire industry that puts out surveys, and you can look at economic surveys, you can look at other types of surveys. Those response rates are significant and actually do give you a really good indication of where things are from a sentiment-wise on a quarterly basis.
I would have a question, because this has come up a few times from you, Commissioner Anderson, that this and some others that have been brought up fall within the statistical analysis that's commonly accepted. And, I know Traverse City Light and Power has engaged in a couple of survey responses and had somewhat similar numbers paid to be done for us. So for self-selecting, what is your anticipated response then for, because surveys aren't done with the assumption that 100% of people will pick up their phone, reply or whatever. So I'm curious what ballpark you're looking for when you ask, because it's come up a couple times and I'm curious.
Well, number one, if it was 100% response, it would be a census, not a survey. Best practice would be simply to identify the confidence level. What is this 95% confidence that it's plus or minus 3 percentage points? I mean, that would be the typical way to express the accuracy of what you're reporting.
So that's what you're looking for. It comes before us. Thank you. Do you have other questions, or anybody else have other questions? Go ahead, Tim.
Not a question, just a comment, and it's not new. I think I've shared the comment the past years. I think the work that's done by Traverse Connect is commendable. It's valuable. It helps our greater community. But I don't support continuing with the contract because we serve not just the high-end jobs, we serve everybody. And I feel this talent attraction and everything is great, like attract that talent. But through that talent attraction, should you be even more successful, it's diluting the folks at the lower end of the economic spectrum. They're all still here, and we still have a responsibility to be serving them as well. And so I feel that our dollars would be better used with our priorities, and encourage you to go knock it out of the park and keep doing the great work you're doing. But the dollars from city taxpayers should be devoted, in my mind, to higher priorities that serve the entire public, including those at the lower end, and especially those at the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum who are not really being captured in my opinion, by your work. So it's not a question, that's just why
I-
I'll be voting no.
I appreciate
not
that, and
individually
actually, that's why last week we led a coalition of 10 partner organizations, including businesses, nonprofits, and local government, with a representative from the city in attendance in Lansing. And we brought the priorities of the region, including the city, to top elected officials, agency heads, the administration of Governor Whitmer. Our agenda was to advocate for the local needs, and it wasn't just the local needs of some one demographic or another. It was the local needs of the entire region. So key topics, and I think you'll appreciate this, Commissioner Werner, because they are some of the priorities that you mentioned quite frequently. Workforce housing for key roles like teachers and nurses and firefighters. Rural prosperity grants for local municipalities and nonprofits that don't have the capacity to do it all in-house. Environmental issues like rural land and water preservation. And supportive services and funding for our homeless population. In fact, the Pines was the one issue that came up in every single one of those meetings in Lansing last week. Everyone from the Speaker of the House to the Senate Majority Leader to the governor's policy person. We talked about the Pines. We talked about the need for help here in Traverse City. So we are absolutely advocating and working on those priorities for those in the community that are probably in need of the most help.
Do we have other questions? Go ahead, Heather.
Are any of the services you have outlined in the contract tailored for and exclusive to the city, as in not available to regular TC Connect subscribers?
Yeah, really good question. The contract you had before you is a contract that is very, very similar to what Grand Traverse County and the DDA and other public sector partners have. And it's a really important distinction. I'm glad you asked this question, because one of the things that was really called out, again, going back to 2019, 2018, and all the planning, was the business development and talent development projects that are no one entity and no one organization's responsibility. So those are the things that we put in the public sector contracts. Now, we have private sector organizations that get specific benefits that they may want, a sponsorship of an event, or tickets at an event, or, professional development services. Those are all things that are made available to the city in addition to the economic development things that are in the contract. So the things that we work on where we're attracting businesses from elsewhere, or we're helping to help early stage company get started, or maybe an entrepreneur has an idea, those are the things that we provide specifically because of the public sector contracts that are not applicable to the private businesses that are invested in us. Did I answer your question?
Do we have other questions or comments? Okay, and I think, Warren, you teed this up as you were presenting this, and I think we muddled it a little, but this is the draft proposal and for us to look over. Something that has kind of come up in our conversations at agenda review and tonight even, I think, is we did start this contract, as Warren mentioned, in 2018, and it's been several years and almost an entirely new commission since then. So one thing that Liz and I were discussing, and Warren and I discussed today as well, is allowing this commission to have a study session in the next month or two or so, sometime over the summer. I'm not gonna, we've assigned so many things randomly, I don't wanna arbitrarily assign it and have a very overworked staff. But in the next couple of months, having a study session in general about economic development and what we are looking for. I think Warren's laid out a lot of things that he does and Traverse Connect does in our region and has been doing under this contract. This is a different commission. This is something we haven't brought up as a general discussion in a few years. And so That is something we are looking at doing in the next few weeks, is having a conversation about economic development and that investment by us as a city. And so I just wanted to share that is something that we have out there to have as a discussion. Because I think there's some different thoughts up here now, so, than 5 years ago.
So are you suggesting that we table this until further? until
Well,
we've
there's
had a
nothing
study
we haven't made a motion, there's no table. Warren had mentioned that this was a draft that he brought to us. I think we can, we have this, we know the good work they've done, and I think that we can have that conversation and come back to this conversation as something more specific.
If I may,
Mhm.
I think it's worth sharing this anecdote that yesterday, on a Sunday afternoon, we hosted Senator Mallory McMorrow from the Royal Oak area. She's the chair of the Economic Development Committee in the state Senate. The senator's schedule, so you kind of sometimes got to do things on a Sunday afternoon. That was jointly hosted with Senator DeMoose, who obviously represents this area. We had 24 municipal leaders and business leaders in the room. There was a roundtable discussion on improvements and strategy for economic development for the state of Michigan. City participants weren't able to attend. We still brought forth the city's priorities, as we understand them, because the city wasn't able to attend. They are looking at our region as a model for what the state should be doing. And I think that's worth noting, because they see the cross-sector collaboration that we've developed over the last 5 years as an example to follow. So they are going to do a series of meetings around the state in order to help the state modernize their economic development. And I think it's pretty telling that they started here. So, again, with your peer municipalities seeing the value in this partnership, and the private sector seeing the value in this partnership, and elected officials from both the state and federal arenas seeing the value in this partnership, if there's something that we need to do differently, I would ask, please provide that detail. And we would be more than happy to incorporate it into the, a final contract if that is appropriate.
Thank you, Warren. All right, thank you, Warren. We appreciate your time and the presentation and all the work.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the end of our agenda here. We have Human Rights Commission reappointment. This was another situation where the ad hoc still is in existence, and we are looking for a couple more seats, correct, Sarah, for the Human Rights Commission?
For the Human Rights Commission,
Yes,
yes, we
yes.
need city
Residents.
residents to apply.
But
City residents.
Yes. In the meantime, we did have Jennifer Loop, who is also the current chair, reapply. She has good attendance, all the other stuff that we require for the reappointment when there's no other applicants. So this is, just to point out, this is another example of one of those where we didn't have the meeting yet, but we had an applicant that met our new criteria. So if anybody would like to bring that forward.
I move that Jennifer Loop be reappointed to the term expiring June 30th, 2027 on the Human Rights Commission as recommended by the ad hoc committee consisting of Mayor Amy Shamrow, Chair, Commissioner Jackie Anderson, and Commissioner Heather Shaw.
Thank you, Jackie.
Second.
Thank you, Heather. Any further discussion on this? Any public comment on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And I believe this is another one we have here, right? That was a similar situation?
Yep, this is for
Mhm.
the Election Commission, and again, this is the reappointment of the current incumbent, the sole applicant for this position.
And so similarly, we'll take another motion if somebody would like to make it.
I'll make the motion that Barbara Azendelft be reappointed to the term expiring December 11, 2026 on the Election Commission as recommended by the ad hoc committee consisting of Mayor Amy Shamrow, Commissioner Mai Stanley, and Commissioner Mitch Treadwell.
Thank you, Mai.
Support.
Thank you, Mark. Any comments on this item? Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. So we'll move right along to public comment. Is there any general public comment? Could be about anything from tonight, whatever's on your mind. Please come ahead.
Doug Kimball, 523 North Spruce Street, Traverse City. Hello. I want to comment on the Western TART expansion and the plan to move the Parkway truck route closer to our neighborhoods again. You know, I'm not good at this, and you all know I'm not good at it, and I don't like doing it. But I hope you'll consider that when you judge my comments. It's that important, you know, to me and to my neighbors in the neighborhood. So I'm asking for myself, for my neighbors, for the neighborhood, please don't bring the truck route closer to our neighborhood. And this isn't just my opinion, because I sent you through email 107 signatures that I got in support of not moving the truck route closer to us. And so that means I've had about really 120 conversations with people in the neighborhood. Some agreed but didn't want to sign, and some disagreed, but not many. And I've heard a lot of stories about how people feel about this and what's happening to our neighborhood and the whole city, and they don't like a lot of things. But this is a quality of life issue, and it can't be quantified with flights landed and hotel beds occupied, or tourist visits, or tourist dollars spent. And so, because of that, it seems kind of meaningless, you know? I don't know how else to convey what I'm feeling, what I want to say, but, you know, I went out and got 107 signatures, knocked on a lot of doors, took a lot of time. And so I want you to show that our quality of life is important to you. And you could, you know, I know there's things going on about this subject, but I can't find out what really is going on. So just please consider that narrower median, and then the truck route won't have to come closer to us. And the quality of life that I'm talking about is the noise that comes with the parkway. It's the truck noise, you know, engine brakes. And if it's not engine brakes, it's just when they back off the accelerator. It's similar to engine braking. And we get that all the time. If you would come out there and try to have a conversation along Bay Street, you either have to wait for the trucks to pass, you know, talk in between trucks.
Thank you.
And you are getting better at the public comment, but we have given you it even on non-agenda items, so I think that's good for tonight. We appreciate it.
What do you mean, non?
There was, I'm saying in previous meetings, you had been able to get up and speak on an agenda item that wasn't, so, but you're very good, we do appreciate you, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment for tonight? Any final comment from the commission? I just wanted to share that I did get a text to remind me, or to let me know actually, that the road commission is going to be putting out ballot language to vote on this week to put a ballot or a millage renewal out. So our conversation from earlier about when was that coming up, it's coming up this year. And they're going to be submitting the ballot language, so that will be going forward, so we will be included on that as part of the vote. Mr. Treadwell.
Yes, I would like to apologize for my absence last week and for my unusual quietness, as somebody remarked during this meeting. On my way to the City Commission meeting or study session last Monday, I was biking across town and got hit by a car. I suffered, in addition to bangs and bruises, a rather severe concussion. I can be grateful to City Police and City Fire for their very rapid response. I was able to have them on the scene within 2 minutes, and then got to Munson, got patched up. I am back to walking around, but my concentration and short-term memory are not 100% back yet.
Well, we're very
I'm
glad you're here.
working towards my recovery.
We hope that's a speedy recovery, and we're very glad you're here this week, and I do have to say that was not a, I was very glad to hear back from you after the text during the meeting, letting us know that you had been in the accident and your subsequent updates, and glad to see you're on the road to recovery, Mr. Treadwell. Thank you. Go ahead, Heather.
I just want to alert you that Frank Deturi has some characteristics you may not be aware of, that he is a musician, and he's also a movie star. Mitch Treadwell and I both attended the Fish Pass, well, actually, Mark Wilson was there too. The three of us were at the Fish Pass movie presentation at the Opera House last week, and it was a great event. And the movie is a little bit too long, but I think all movies are too long. But it's absolutely worth checking out. And Frank is a star all the way through the whole thing. And he contributed the music.
Oh, wow. Thank you
So
for
he was
that,
a
Heather.
star in the movie, and he was also a star on that project. So here's to Frank Deturi.
Thank you, Heather, and also thank you for reminding us about that. I think that'll be on PBS in the future too, won't it? Yes, I'm seeing some head nods, so everybody keep a look for that. Any other comments? Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Just, will the budget further discussion be part of a study session next week? And when is that being decided, or how?
It seems like it's leading that way. We'll get an email out to everybody probably tomorrow, so.
Didn't hear that.
It
On
wouldn't
the
be Memorial Day, it would be
Tuesday, the
Tuesday, the 28th.
I
if we're
thought we
doing
were not doing a study
Well,
session.
I've conveyed I am unavailable due to board meeting of the other board I sit on, which is the one that pays my mortgage for me through my paycheck.
Well, then we can, yeah, we'll discuss and check in and see, because if there's not a quorum, we can't have a meeting anyways, so. With the Memorial Day movement to Tuesday, that is outside of our usual pattern, so we will check on that.
Thank you.
All right. Meeting adjourned. These kids got out.